from the day they were born.
Yeah.
We never came up the bottom way, and we learned. None of us, Greg or Robert or I, we didn't know everything at the beginning, but we were started and we learned it, and we took a real good interest in it. But these millennials, it's so funny. What happened? I don't know, the screen is weird. So anyway, Robert gave us his presence today, and I think he's got some good stuff to talk about. And then Greg's got some things planned for the, what do you call it, time machine. And I'll tell you something, those of you who are not using time machine, better, because you're going to be so glad you did. For instance, here's an occurrence. Last night, I was trying to print out the membership list, and I hit somebody's deal. It was from Ron Wempen, I think it was. And I hit something, and we keep history of all the dates that people renew, and it was, Leonard had designed this database. And so the whole history was gone. And I'm like, oh crap, you know? And with this old file maker we're using, I'm back on 6. So what happens is I says, oh God, I can't get it back. And what happens is, the minute you make a change on it, it saves it immediately. So when you shut down or quit, it has already saved everything, so you're not in any big problem. Well, I said, first time I had a chance to do it other than my wife's for the whole hard drive, I was able to go back to where I have an alias on the desktop, go back to where it was, and then hit the time machine icon in the dock, and it brings up all the past backups going back in time. And I was able to go one time earlier, and I was able to say restore, and what it does is it selects it, takes it off to the side, and then puts it back into the active window, and everything was fixed. So if you're not using time machine, you better.
I got a question about time machine.
Okay.
Question about time machine.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we hang on to that though?
Yeah, sure.
Until time machine, or else maybe Robert will answer it in his question and answers.
That's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Does time machine record everything? In other words, if you have some external disks on your computer, does time machine record those also?
Time machine not recording anything. Time machine takes snapshots, ongoing snapshots of the files on your drive. It's not recording any actions per se, but all that will be expressed more a little later. It's just it's the easiest to use backup system that there is for archiving. It's really not a backup.
But anyway, it's taking snapshots of the external drives too.
Correct.
You're taking
Well,
snapshots of everything.
you can set it to do different things, but it's not really a backup, it's more of an archive. So it's that, Greg will get into that a little bit later. Right? Absolutely. Okay. Otherwise, what's going on this last month? Any problems or interests or curiosities for what's been going on? Yes, sir.
I have basically 3 questions. Number 1, I have a bunch of family history that's from 8mm movies. My brother-in-law sat with the folks a number of years ago, played the video, or played the 8mm and recorded it with a VHS recorder, and had the folks comment on the stuff. Horrible. But what I want to do,
The comments or the video?
no, the video. I want to take the audio off of that. I have taken,
Remove the audio.
remove the audio and place it on the new DVD conversion that I just had made. How do I do that? And I want to cut and put it in sequential order.
your initial 8mm had no sound on it.
Right,
Okay, so basically, you've got a VHS with sound and audio.
right.
So you record, you can transfer, one thing, you could just go to a transfer company and have them transfer VHS to
That's what
DVD.
it says.
That'll transfer the whole thing with the audio, right?
That's not what I want.
I understand that. What I'm saying is you could do that. Or you could personally take that VHS and record it yourself by putting a hi-fi camera in front of it, watching it on the screen, and then just record that. That'll degrade the video somewhat, but it gives you ultimate control. Because now when you record that, you can record it without audio.
Okay,
And then you separate from that, you can output the audio separately onto its own track, and then add them as you wish later on.
okay, how do I do that?
How do you do what? Which
How
one?
do I pull the audio off of,
You play it and have the audio go to one source of a speaker or such that is being recorded.
so it's gonna be a recording with all the background noise in the room?
Okay, try
Whatever,
something
anything.
else.
Doesn't know doesn't know a burp from a great comment.
Okay, there isn't with Photos or iMaker, one of the programs that lets me strip off the audio off of one file and
Yes.
put it
Oh,
on
yeah,
another
you-
file.
Well, it's merely recording just the video or recording just the audio, putting them into two different tracks, and then adding them as you need at a later date.
Yeah, but
For instance, right now, if I was to record this room with a video camera, I could turn off the microphone.
Yeah, that-
Okay.
I understand that, I understand that perfectly.
Okay,
I'm beyond those points.
Okay.
So far, we've talked around it, but we,
okay. Greg is more of an expert than I, and he will give you more specifics than I.
Okay.
But yes, it's easily able to be done, and it's just a matter of separating them out and putting them back together as you wish.
okay,
Okay, next question.
they all have a.
Okay, then they're all artsy fartsy, and that's more Greg than me. So he'll give you names, numbers, and brands, and everything else. I'll also give him 40 minutes to figure it out. The best answer, the shortest answer, the quickest answer. Any other questions or issues? Yes, sir.
Is 9.4 safe to download?
Which 9.4? You
It
gotta
must be
qualify.
iOS, I guess.
Yeah.
Safe, is it beta?
No. Last week it was 3.3 and I just saw something that 9.4 is out.
Okay, so you're talking about the existing versions, as opposed to the beta versions of 10,
Correct.
iOS. Yeah, yes, it's safe. If it's not beta, you're fine. I mean, you would have heard about it by now. If you already know about the stuff, then you would have heard.
Yeah, they keep, my iPhone and my iPod keep reminding me that I
It,
should do it.
it's only a new version to thwart those that want to circumvent the Apple Store. So you don't need to worry about that. I mean, it's not really that important, but
Well, according to Apple, it's a security update. Yes, you should do it.
yeah, always do it. Any other questions or problems you came with? Okay, good.
Is the battery any good?
Was that a pause or what was that? I don't know what that was. Anyways, today I thought we'd talk a little bit about TechTool Pro. TechTool Pro is one of many different utilities that are out there that might allow you to analyze what your drives and see what's going on and sometimes fix them and that kind of stuff. Most of the versions of TechTool Pro, they release a new version every year, every 2 years. It's kind of like their subscription. These things really don't change with each version all that much. Very little new features come about. But it's their way of getting, another $40 from you. But to have one of them is fine, is interesting. It's just a tool like anything else. It might help you analyze something if something's going wrong, or tell you something about your machine that you might otherwise not be aware of. Sometimes the graphical interface is good. It has some preferences such that it can monitor your computer automatically. Every time you start up, it automatically loads. And so it's going to send you an alert if your hard drive is beyond a certain amount of disk space. It's kind of handy. One of the problems we'll often have in here is people talk about their computers just really slowing down and it's this and it's that. and actually it's been getting smaller and smaller and smaller disk space available to a point where, you know, there's nothing left. I've had some computers that, you know, the number of space on the hard drive is down into the kilobytes. And which just makes it agonizingly painful to try to do anything because some process is continually adding files. So TechTool Pro, one of the many features it has is things like monitoring your hard drive space, monitoring your disk drive, and those kinds of items. When it starts up as this kind of interface, and it's telling you some items up on top. The USB, that's basically just telling me what kind of port I have, whether it's a USB 2 or USB 3, that kind of thing, because of the speed. It tells me the speed of the USB. But if you're looking at that, it says 400 megabits per second, 480, really doesn't tell you necessarily, jump out, doesn't scream at you, USB 2, USB 3. You have to know what the heck that means. And it's not like that gauge is going to go all over the place. It's just a statement of fact in actuality on that particular one. The processor up on the top, again, that's just a statement of fact. You can find these kinds of information out other places on your computer, but this is a nice graphical interface for that. So this happens to have a 2.4 gigahertz processor in it with a 6 megabyte cache for memory. Speed of the network that it's currently running on. You know, the good and bad of this kind of stuff, it's a little bit too geeky. I'd like it to be a little bit more clear exactly what these are, because everything in the world has to have it in context. If it doesn't have context, it's worthless. You don't understand what it's trying to tell you. So it's kind of interesting. Some of the things it tells you might not be able to be as obvious. This particular MacBook Pro was built in 2011, happened to be built in China. That kind of stuff. You can always find these things out by other tools, free, whatever else, because these developers, they just merely go and query the system, and there's other tools that will query it similarly. If I click on configuration, it shows the different kinds of items that can be tested and how they are going to, what they're going to apply against. Okay, so we've got we're on a check computer. That's just a general, let me take a look at the whole computer type of thing. And from that, there's this unobvious button down here in the bottom right to run check computer. That goes and runs all kinds of different tests on it. Essentially, the test suite here. The memory test is going to test it's telling me I have 16 gigs in there. And basically, it's going to test the available RAM, the free RAM. So you could either load it up immediately without loss of other programs loaded into memory, or you could run it from another external partition or another external source to be able to test more memory. Surface scans, basically it's looking at your hard drive and checking to see whether it can read and write around the drive. Smart check. Every drive has there is an attribute called smart. And every hard drive has this attribute, and that can be verified to see historically how well have you been performing. Historically, have you been able to be read reliably, or has it taken a couple of extra times to go and read information? Historically, have you had to be writing bad blocks off to a memory area and to such? So the smart attribute, this is basically going to tell you how that setting is current on your existing hard drive. Partition map. When you buy a computer these days, most often it just has one partition. You have the hard drive, and then with the hard drive you have the partition map, which just is a slightly smaller subset of the whole hard drive that is what you're using. And so when it comes up Macintosh HD, that is a partition. That is the primary partition of the hard drive itself. And we've probably seen that a little bit. If I jump over to disk utility, you've often seen that there where it says, it shows you on the left, it shows you the hard drive, and then it shows you the partition. So the hard drive is the physical object, and the partition is one or more partitions, just one, it's the primary purpose, one or more partitions within that hard drive as it has been set up. And we've talked about it, heard about it, you know, partitioning drives out there. I'm not a big fan of it unless you really have a need for it. And if you have a need for it, you'll typically know you have a need for it. It's really important that you do it this way.
Otherwise, don't.
Right, otherwise you'll just be creating a problem. In this case, where I talked about a computer that had its hard drive full and couldn't operate. In essence, it was a security system, and the program, the operating system and the program and all that kind of stuff was over here. And then it writes data files of the video camera. And normally if you just write it to that same hard drive, the same partition, you can end up with a full partition and the whole computer can't do anything at all. As opposed to perhaps partitioning and writing the data, the video files to a partition. So the operating system, the application, never gets full. At worst case is the file, the area where you are writing the data files, the video files. If that gets full, oh what, big deal. You know, it's erased it, you can do this, you can do that, all that kind of stuff. It's not affecting the operating system. So even when it gets full, to try to remove files from that is not a problem because the operating system is on a different partition. The part that's thinking and figuring out what to do has plenty of space to think and act. And so it can delete on a full drive just fine. So that's a time that you might be wanting to do a partition map. Or if you're using Photoshop in a big way, that's another time. Volume structures, a bit about the hard drive and the way it's designed, its writing, its table, its directories, and that kind of stuff. Video memory. This is one of those that doesn't take a long time to run, so I'm going to press run. And it's basically, it's showing you, these kinds of programs recognize that they're really at a low level they operate. And so the information to you is more for giggles and grins, because this kind of stuff, this is what this one happens to be doing. And this one is semi-effective to be able to show to you, but recognize that a lot of the graphics stuff are really not necessarily what's going on. So it just ran the video test and it shows that it passed over here. Sensors. Sensors are always an interesting item because, especially on a PowerBook or especially on a portable, excuse me. See all those graphics up there just for giggles and grins. But over on the right here, those are all different sensors within this computer that are being tested and checked and verified that they all have accurate, significant value. If you will, because for instance, you'll go up in temperature and you've got all of these different types of sensors that are going on that the computer's continually monitoring and checking to make sure everything's good to go. These types of things are things that will kick the fans on if they're not working right and such. So if your fans are not working correctly, the temperatures will be off. Light sensors. This particular one has a sensor whether it detects whether it's dark, and if so, it turns on the keyboard light. So those kinds of things are kind of interesting of sorts. And again, as I said, the fans test, here's from left to right. Basically, it's kind of an interesting test. It runs until it says, okay, a fan, go to a certain speed, and so it tests to see if that fan is actually able to go to that speed within a certain amount of variance. So it's a kind of thing that does tell you, this might tell you that your computer needs cleaning. That's gathering too much dust and dirt. Because maybe the fans can't run as fast as they should. That kind of stuff. Battery health, you know. So many of these things, again, perhaps the most powerful part of a program like this is the fact that it can do it for you automatically in the background on a regular basis and then notify you of it. Because otherwise, you're typically not going to run these kinds of tests until there's a problem, and by that time it's too late. Being proactive is the most important thing you can do with the computer, is to know about it before it's causing a problem. That's what that smart aspect was of a drive. It's telling you, historically, you've been having a problem. So if something goes and verifies and watches that smart indicator and says to you, hey, I'm having to write an awful lot of bad blocks out lately, you now know, okay, maybe it's time to replace my hard drive. And as we've been talking, hard drives are going out significantly more often than they used to, significantly quicker. Now, you recognize, what's interesting here is that the device, the battery, was manufactured in 2012, and at this point, capacity life remaining is 93%. Pretty darn good. And the cycle count is only 1/3 of 1,000. Pretty darn good. Why? Because Apple happened to replace this battery for me under warranty not too far long ago. So that was kind of a neat thing, and it worked for me. Network interfaces. Again, personally, I'd like them to get rid of all this extra stuff because it's just
Yes, Robert's like me, we don't need all the fancy.
keep it simple.
It just
Keep
give
it
us the
simple.
data that we need.
Right.
And
right.
many of you don't realize all those sensors he was showing, they're there. There are sensors that you wouldn't believe, especially in the iMacs, these, like that one. They have all these little sensor wires that have to be connected up when you take the logic board out. And if one's not connected or it's at the wrong temperature or something, you'll find that your fans all of a sudden you turn on the thing and it runs real high. Well, something's wrong. And that temperature sensor says, oh, the hard drive is too hot. And so it runs the fan up to try and cool it down. And many times you find that either you forgot to connect it or whatever the deal is. So many of them are important to the running of the thing reliably.
And what's interesting there is that many of these kinds of sensors have a trigger, will provide you a visual warning or a note, but sometimes they don't. So Steve or other techs, sometimes they'll run this kind of a program afterward to see that all the sensors are operating properly. Otherwise they know, uh-oh, yeah, I forgot to connect something. So they can go back in and check that wire, check that area, and that kind of stuff. So all of these here I've been talking about the different kinds of things that you can test, things that you can schedule that it automatically does on a regular basis, and those kinds of things. So those are under the test area. We also have under the tools area different items that you could use to find out things that are not necessarily obvious, if you will. I left it on right here to local network, where it basically scans the network and tells me all different kinds of things about what's going on, who's on my network. I wouldn't say it's 100% reliable because not all devices show up there. In particular, I'm kinds of devices I'm often working with don't actually come up often enough. But it kind of shows you what's on the network and everything else. Sometimes
training room.
Pardon me?
Shows the training room
Yep.
up there.
Yep.
And the front door.
Russell's and Jean's Mac Pro and an iMac. Who that is? My MacBook Pro, that kind of stuff. So these kinds of things are interesting. You'll notice that they're all on 10.30 network. That's what's been provided by the Wi-Fi network here. That's how I'm there. The 127, that's coming up. It's checking, and that's actually my own machine. That's what we call a loopback. So that's really, it's basically just telling me what machine would enable me to identify my own personal machine, the one that this software is running on. And there's another router out there as well. So it's just investigative, can be handy, kind of stuff. But an eDrive, is you can create this to be able to run the software from. And when you run it from this eDrive, it then can test and verify more aspects of the more tools than otherwise would be blocked out from. You can set this up as a portable on a portable drive to take it to another machine and that kind of stuff to test elsewhere, or to be able to boot without running the memory on this one quite as much. Partition repair, we talked about partitioning and that you might or may not want to do based upon your needs. It'll repair the partitions. One more thing to break, and that's why perhaps you might not want to create a partition in the first place. Rebuilding a hard drive. My son had an iMac whose hard drive went out. I think we figured out it was maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. And the computer would start up, get about halfway through the process, then shut down. And he'd start up again and get about halfway through the process and shut down. And it was a bad hard drive. He took it in Apple. They said, okay, we'll put it in a new hard drive. And you want your old hard drive back? And he says, yes, I do. So he'll hand it to me, and we'll attach it externally through what we call a sled,
Adopt.
a dock, a sled, what have you, and attach it to this computer with just a USB cable running over to attaching it to the hard drive. And then I'll run some tests on here, perhaps be able to repair the directory or such of that. So I'll use this kind of program to potentially repair that hard drive. Which reminds me, and so we'll find that all back. As it turns out, he went home, they got a new hard drive, he went home, plugged it into his external, what do we call those things, Apple's, time capsule, and time machine just put everything back there, and he was up and running within a couple of hours. So, I mean, he has a lot of things that he operates in his business out of the cloud, but there's many things that are local, and that time capsule, boy, he was up and running, and it was just amazing to him that he was able to be up and running, and with a very recent backup because of Time Machine and all that kind of stuff. But we'll put it on here and see if we can recover some additional
We
stuff.
tell everybody every month.
Time machine will affect them.
And how many people are using Time Machine? So we've got everybody scared. Good. The thing is I had a situation twice where my wife's computer, the internal hard drive went bad, and I have a little, I don't know, 1 terabyte hard drive that I got over at Costco for under $100. But that, since my wife's work is so much more important to the family, even though I use the Time Machine backup, that if she loses her data, I mean, she's got years and years of customers and training programs that she's written. And so what happens is I throw in a new hard drive, just like Robert had the situation, plug in have the Time Machine rebuild the whole thing on the new deal, on the new hard drive. And you got to do this, otherwise, as I always say, don't come crying to me. We've told everybody. We beat our heads against the wall. And it looks like some of you got it, you just gotta take advantage of what's out there and always try. The thing I like is somebody says, oh, I'm using this and so on the cloud and whatever, and they're paying extra for it, and this program, the Time Machine, far superior. Sorry,
Okay.
Robert.
Now, one of the many things we've talked about over the years is fragmentation of a hard drive. It used to be a really, really big thing, and Apple manages it significantly well in the background, defragmenting as necessary. And I say as necessary, because there's a lot of files that one can't be put back together, if you will. They must remain fragmented as they are. Others really don't matter, they're not touched. They're written out there and they're sitting there and they're not accessed. Apple is dealing with more often the files that when they're read, they're read in pieces and parts, and then Apple will automatically go back and write them as one as often as not. Now this particular, I did a preview, this is file optimization, which is all about defragmenting the drive. And I'm intrigued that this one is showing 39% so far, or 40%. It's processed, it has 2 million files, it's got about 870,000 that is processed thus far. It's telling me that it has 41% fragmented. Well, similar to, all too often, things are spoken about in exaggeration, if you will. It's kind of like, it's kind of like the dangers of cookies on your computer when you're running your malware scans and that kind of stuff. That they're going to talk about things being far worse than they really, really, really are. If after it, I was hoping this would run a little bit faster, but after things have run like this and it's showing 42, Yes, you can, an interesting, real world is what it's all about. You know, when these things talk about how dangerous and how bad things are, what would be most interesting, and I've done this once or twice in the past, is I've done some time tests. I've taken a large file and loaded it in, timed it, and made some modifications and saved it, and then written it back and timed all these sequences. And then I've loaded myself back from it, from a time machine, from the time capsule using time machine, back to those files. That hard drive is exactly the way it was before the testing. And then I ran those exact same tests, doing the exact same things. And what you want to do is you want to do that on a time test, and then do a fragmentation, and then run the time test again, and see what kind of differences you get.
Negligible.
What's that?
Negligible.
Negligible. Next, very, very, very negligible.
That's because the hardware, the access, the disk drive access speed, not the spinning speed, not the rotational speed, but the hardware inside the computer, the data channels they use are wider, the actuators are quicker. It's not as much of an issue as it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they recommended you to do disk optimization, like, especially on a PC, like every other month or so.
And you know, it's interesting because as well also, the programs are getting smarter. They are learning to read the things that will allow them to display your page first. You know, you could have a 60-page or 100-page or a 200-page document. They don't read the whole entire document and then throw up the first page. They're learning to read enough of the document to be able to throw up that first page, and you're thinking, wow, that thing loaded quick. Well, it loaded quick because now your eye's going to look at it and start analyzing and think, okay, let's see, what did I want to do? Well, why are you doing all that additional thinking? It's loading in the rest of the stuff in the background there. So real time, it's doing it for your pleasure, your visual pleasure, for your ability to start your work, for your ability to look at this and see, did I open the right document? What version is this? Where was I? All of that kind of stuff. So it's a get ready. And this happens a lot on the web, but equally similar on other programs like word processors and that kind of stuff, where you really don't need to have the whole program loaded before you're able to start working. On web pages and stuff like that, they are actually, there's what we call interlace. And there's, on the lines on the screen, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll load 1, 3, 5, 7. So that you see enough stuff, and then they load in the other stuff. And it actually, again, allows you to think that it's happening a lot quicker. Because your eye fills in the blanks a lot of times. It makes accomplishes a better resolution. So let's see. Down here, by the way, my machine has a 4-core processor. So it's showing you the different 4 cores. Should you be curious to see how they are being currently running at this moment in time. This is not just for this process. It's for any process that happens to be on the computer. But in general, the first and third core are busier than the others. And that's a function of the program, the kind of work that it's doing, the wisdom and experience of the program. Are they able to take the opportunities that are available to them and spread them out amongst different cores? Because each one, if this was all in one core, if all of the work was in one core, then it wouldn't happen as quickly. What's that?
Hit the doorbell, please.
Get the doorbell. Yes. Hey, buddy, I'm at a computer club meeting.
Nice. We're just on the way to a dare show, so we're just off to say hi.
All right, buddy.
We're at a meeting.
All right, enjoy. Take care.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye, bud.
Yeah, he was,
He was at the very first Orange Apple Computer Club meeting. He was about 4 weeks old in his carrier.
yeah,
So, yeah,
we've only been doing this 35 years.
yeah. He was there. He was there at the first. He was there at the beginning. He's one of the millennial things, you know. But,
That's why Robert's hair has been turning gray.
Yeah.
And mine's silver.
you know, it's interesting. The more I haven't run this recent one. I don't run this very often. I'm doing it more for giggles here and grins here. The more I look at that, the more I recognize it now.
It's moving pretty quick now.
Well, that's not 78% fragmented. That's 78% running through the test. Which makes it a whole lot more sensible, but it sure would be nice if they let you know that ahead of time. That kind of stuff, because, I mean, I
Should have
like.
the word completed underneath it or
What's that?
something like.
Yeah,
should
right,
have
right,
the word
exactly.
completed underneath it.
Percent verified, percent, you know, analyzed, or whatever it is. Because it was a little bit, I was a little bit thinking, wow, these guys are overly boastful on how much fragmentation they're finding. But obviously, at this point, you want to have, when mode goes another frame. It's interesting, on my phone, one of the.
You're almost finished now.
Yeah, one of the things I run on my phone is a game called Dice, and it's a Yahtzee kind of game, and I play it. And I went in for some beta testing to Scopely. They're in Santa Monica, and they were showing me new versions of it and asking me what I thought about this, and what I liked about the old. And all these games, they said, you know, do you spend any money on these games? I says, no, I'm not one of those guys that you're going to make any money off me. But they failed to ask the next most important question. What could we do that would cause you to pay? What would you be willing to pay for? And I found this fascinating. They paid me $75 from my opinion, for about a half hour's worth of yak. But they asked me all different kinds of things. What do you think of this color? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? They didn't ask me, what would it take to get you to spend money? I just blown away, and I didn't realize until I was on my way home, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Anyways, okay, so here we go. We found 871 fragmented files out of 2,168,000. Anybody want to do the math on that? No. Using your calculator on your phone and tell me what percentage that is?
Less than one.
Pardon me?
Very low.
Very low, okay.
Less than one.
Okay, I don't hear anybody who's going to do that for me. So I'm going to do all clear. 871 divided by 2,168,491 equals 0.0004%.
I bet that speeds your Mac up a lot.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go. So this is why defragmenting your drive is not worth your time.
However, sometimes what it does, it finds potential errors down the road. As it's copying files and moving them to make them contiguous again, it might find bad spots on the disk because it's accessing something it wouldn't normally access.
But this particular aspect of it, this is kind of like why you don't need this program. It gives you feel good, but it's kind of like telling you how well things are being taken care of behind the scenes by Apple for you.
It's gee whiz.
It's gee whiz. It's a lot of gee whiz. Yes, sir.
On a related subject, several years ago I used a version of Tech Tool to defragment my drive, and it screwed up the thing terribly.
If it works, don't fix
So
it.
what I did is I just went to my backup, raised the drive, restarted my backup, and I had perfect defragmentation.
That's right. That is another way that you can defragment your drive. Is to write it back.
See, because what happens in that situation is, when you do it, you're transferring stuff from one drive to the other. It starts out and it writes the stuff from center out and basically puts it, as it transfers each file, it's going to transfer it, not look where the file was before. It's going to start new, and everything's going to be what we call.
Looks at the table of contents, finds the first file, says, where is that? It goes over here, it's in space 1, 28, and 35. It says, okay, it grabs those pieces and writes them to the new drive. 1, 2, 3. So it goes and grabs them and writes them fresh and new. So that kind of stuff.
As long as it's not a clone.
That's not a clone, that's right. So then we have more tools, volume optimization. It takes all the free space and puts it into one place for you, which is different than defragmenting, because your free space may end up all over the place. So this kind of makes it such that ongoing forward, you're less likely to have fragmentation as quickly as if it was a problem. Cloning volumes, a feature that you may already have with many of your different backup programs and carbon copy cloner and all that kind of stuff. Damaged volume or trash recovery. You've thrown away something, you want to get it back, you've emptied the trash. This has the ability to go and get it out of the trash kind of stuff. It's kind of nice. You can set a certain amount of time that you should be able to more easily get your stuff. Wipe the data. I had a client the other day that she and he are both a couple of foil hats. They just, they don't want to The easiest way to transfer things from one computer to another might be Dropbox in 2 different locations, but no, they wanna, put it on a flash drive and all that kind of stuff because they don't want things going out on the internet. Never know where that's gonna go. And I shared with them that the 7-pass overwrite meets the Department of Defense's standards for making it unrecoverable, and Apple's giving you a 35-pass overwrite, so you can be 5 times greater than the Department of Defense's standards. And you can even pick your overwrite pattern to make it trickier for those that are expecting that it would all be this or that way. Volume journaling, as your drives are set up initially, they're almost always going to be journaled anyways. Journaling is essentially when your operating system says write this file to the drive, it goes over and it says, I wrote down Jim's homework assignment at this time and this is what I wrote. And then every step, every operation, it writes down in a journal file what's going on, such that when you pull the plug and something didn't get written properly, it's able to boot the drive and say, okay, here's when we last did what we were supposed to do, and here's the things that were supposed to have been done. So with a journal, it can go back and recreate the most perfect, the most up-to-date hard drive, and you'll have a lot less opportunities for a file being corrupted or halfway written. So journaling, it's worth the time, if you will. Basically, because there's what we call a commit, and that's where it keeps certain things in cache and doesn't write them initially until it commits and will write those to the drive. It keeps a record of the things that need to be written, because otherwise it'd be slow if every time it wanted to write something, somebody went out there and started writing. Disk permissions. This is actually one of the more interesting ones. It verifies disk permissions, and if first select a hard drive, it's interesting. Before I had a hard drive selected, let's see if I can do that. Yeah. Before I had a hard drive selected, now they're live. Okay. A moment ago, I had to click on the drive, and then I could see the buttons. Personally, the button should always be there such that you can click one and then it should say, if there's only one drive, it should say, I'm going to select your hard drive. This is only one thing I can check. Or please select blah, 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 so I'll know where you want to do of checking your permissions.
Well, we have this problem all the time, Robert. These guys design these things the way they think. And they don't come to us. Oh,
Well, that was the purpose of the beta testing.
That's
They look to see, they want to watch to see what people do and how they do, because they showed me a new interface and they said, what do you see there? What do you think? What do you think that means? Everything else. First thing I said was, stop waste some more electrons. If you have something that I didn't learn in kindergarten, use some fancy word or this or that, allow me to easily click on that and see what the heck that means. To know that the first time I've come to an interface when I have not previously seen this, allow me to try something and then it'll let me know what that is. And then afterward, you don't need to show it again. Disk permissions. Is anybody who doesn't fully understand disk permissions or what that's all about? Is that a pretty clear subject?
No, I don't.
Okay, disk permissions, we use a Unix file system. Our Mac OS is a Unix-based file system. Every single file on there has certain permissions set for that file. Who owns that file? Who can read that file? Who can write to that file? So Apple has said certain files it owns and you cannot read or write. So you can't open it and change that file. Why? Because that's an operating system file and that's not yours. You don't need to muck with it. You don't need to change it. You go mucking with it, everything's going to fall apart and the computer's not going to boot. You write your Word document, you own that file, you can read it, you can write it. And so now you can open that file and start typing. When the permissions get improperly set, they may be changed such that you don't now own that file. And so when you try to copy it over, you can't copy or you can't edit and those kinds of things. So the disk permissions, this is verifying disk permissions. It's verifying based upon their location in the drive, on the hard drive, whether the permissions are properly set. It knows that in these directories, you shouldn't be able to muck with things. It knows in these directories, you should be able to muck with them. So it's checking to see that things are appropriate, and that you can't have a file that you can write, but you cannot read. That wouldn't make any sense. So it's verifying those kinds of things. And, yes, sir?
Doesn't repair disk permissions only apply to the Apple files?
No,
Really?
no.
It's the basic hard drive, and Robert,
Right.
interject one
System
step.
files?
System files are Apple's files, and system files, it knows what it should be able to check against, but it also knows that the files in the documents in your home directory, your documents directory are yours.
And I've never found it to repair those.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, one thing,
Yes.
Robert, is that they say now with the newer OSs, the 10s, that we used to do, and we used to tell people, always check if things are not going right, go to disk utilities, go to repair disk permissions. And it sits there and it chunks and it chunks and it puts out a report. And that report tells you this was supposed to be this, but it found this, and all that stuff. And it tries to
And
correct it.
all Apple files.
All files.
Well,
All
first of
files
all,
on the drive.
okay,
And
there are.
Let's rephrase that.
First
How about
off-
all known files?
all known files,
All
yeah.
known files.
First off, we're talking two different programs. This program may do it one way, different than Apple's. Although I'll also add in there, programs like this often use the exact same Unix file that Apple uses, just with a different interface. But now that it's using the same Unix file that Apple uses, it might use that Unix file in a different way with different parameters than what Apple's doing. So Apple might be using, watching your receipts file, which tell it what has been installed and all that kind of stuff. And so recognize that these are similar but different. Yes, sir.
Well, when you run this program and it says it's corrected this and shows it to you, and you run it again, it's going to do it again and have others. It didn't correct them all in the first time.
Well,
Okay.
sometimes.
Depending upon the particular utility, that's correct. And on this particular utility, file permissions, that's not really the case that this will happen. What you're talking about is when you're doing directory repairs and that sort of thing. Because as it realizes, wait a second, you belong up at this level, and it starts moving things around. Now, after they've been up there and rearranged, it now needs to reanalyze again and say, well, wait a second, now that you're there, this guy over here needs to be moved here. And so it rearranged the chairs again.
Apple solved that problem with Yosemite by hiding those files. There are certain files that it changes the permissions because that's what it is right exactly at this moment, but Apple needs to set it back to its own standards. And so when you run disk, back then when you could run disk permissions, you'd run it a second time. You might see the same file come up again. It's because the Apple operating system has determined after disk permissions run, this really belongs to Apple, or it really belongs to whatever. When they went to Yosemite, they just took those and hid them, because there was no reason for you to get all upset about something like that.
They
The
keep
current
their
version,
versions
El
out.
Capitan, doesn't even have disk permissions options. Apple's logic behind that, they claim, is this is being handled in the background all by itself.
Kind of like the fragmentation kind of thing. So yes, there's opportunities, but Apple's was typically checking mostly Apple's files and application files and that sort of stuff. It wasn't checking, it wasn't doing all of the different kinds of checks that it could do. The checks that we're doing, we're throwing up some warnings that you really didn't need to know about, and you should, and afterwards said this can be ignored. Well, it's kind of like this can be ignored, then why'd you tell me about it? You know what I mean? You got me all upset, and I'm needing to run it over and over again.
By the way, you can always get to disk permissions, whether you have this tool or not, by rebooting the computer, holding down Command R to get it like you're going to recover the operating system, because now there's a hidden partition on the current operating systems that you can boot to for emergencies. But you get a mini version. In the old days, we called it single user Unix or mini Unix. you get a small version that pops up with 3 or 4 things you can do, like reinstall OSX over the network. One of the options is disk utilities, and you get disk permission repair capability at that level. Because Apple feels, well, if you're taking it down here, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, Robert was doing the disk permissions with this test here, and for an example, to give it to you, I happen to be working on Bonnie's right now. Bonnie Rocchiola's sitting here, a member, and she has a Mac Mini, and had a problem with booting her drive and all this stuff, and I found out finally, after recovering all of it, that she had 77 gigs out of an 80 gig hard drive. And what we tell people is always keep at least 10% of your hard drive free for it to do its housekeeping and shifting and all that stuff. So I got those same things that Robert was showing there, and then you said, Lou, that you had gone back and done it again and gotten different answers and stuff. Well, when I did hers, I did it once, I did it twice, and the third time, I got no reports. So it works differently on every situation, every OS is different.
You know, it's interesting, Steve mentioned the 10% kind of rule. Recognize Steve's been around for a long time. And as such, all of these rules are not hard and fast rules.
No.
You buy yourself a 4 terabyte drive, you don't need to save 400 gigabytes as free space. So
I stand corrected on that one. Used to be.
You used to be, yeah. There are
See,
6.
I've got drives that I've got movies on, and they're filled up to like the last half gig.
Oh, yeah.
Because all I do is read it.
I understand that. Point though is have an adequate amount of free space. You know what realistic is. If you have 50 gigs, you're good to go. If you have 40 gigs, you're good to go. Once you start getting down to the 20 gigs and 10 gigs, now it's kind of like it's meaningful.
More megabytes.
More meaningful. That's right. Yes, sir.
Are solid state drives better than mechanical?
Depends what you're doing with them.
More reliable, or is there some trade names better than others?
Yes, yes, and yes.
All of the above.
Yes.
Let me mark it.
SSDs are great for speed. They're improving in reliability, and they're becoming more purposeful. You buy a computer these days, a portable computer, and you may not have a choice of whether you have an SSD or a hard drive. SSD is a solid state drive or just a bunch of memory chips. The problems that can occur with SSD drive is that they still do have a limited life of reads and writes kind of stuff. So, it's getting long enough that it's not really the issue that it once was, but it is real out there. It's more expensive than a hard drive. You can buy a hard drive, you can get a 4 or 6 terabyte drive, but you can't buy a 4 or 6 terabyte SSD. But with everything going to the cloud, it's less and less necessary. In fact, with Apple's with the new operating system on Mac OS X that has more enhanced offloading of files on your computer off into the cloud and that kind of stuff, which is interesting because the reality of that is Apple is doing that because people want smaller, lighter computers, or so they were told. And so you don't really need all the stuff on your hard drive all the time, because we all have always-on internet connections, right? Yeah, wink, wink. And so you want to put it in the cloud. Well, you put it in the cloud, and now you have to pay for that because your first X amount is free, which really isn't big enough to do everything you want to do. But beyond that, you have to pay on an annual subscription basis. So the way the world is, the way the world's going, and we're going to be paying for subscriptions for larger iCloud accounts to be able to store more of our stuff offline.
And they're investing their dollars, and expecting a return on it. And so basically they put up all these big buildings all over the country with nothing but hard drive systems and the cloud, as you call it. And so what happens is like Robert said, they want to make the computers lighter and quicker and all that stuff. But you're just paying them to do so you don't have to do it. But there still is a lag time too. Going up is awful slow. Coming back is quite fast. So it's always takes longer time to read them than it does to write. Or longer time to write than read. But the thing is all the new stuff, I had an occasion to work on somebody's MacBook Air, and you've got memory, and when you buy the computer, they say, oh, well, it comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM or something like that. You can't change, or 8 gigabytes, let's say. You can't change that, and those are directly soldered on the logic board. I can't even change them. But they say your hard drives, solid state hard drive, is not upgradable either. Well, that's not always true, because there are, the hard drives are a little module. I should have brought one. They're a little module, and you slip it in, and there's one screw that holds it in place. And that's a 32 gig hard drive.
You ever see, do you remember in the old days we had airport cards?
Yeah.
You'd open up our computer and you'd pull out this airport card. It was like a credit card, 2 or 3 times thicker than a credit card. That's what SSDs are these days.
And so what happens is I had the occasion to need to recover somebody's hard drive that had spilled
It's like 95% package.
Coke in the back behind her computer, and it
In your face.
screwed up the whole logic board, but her hard drive wasn't touched. All her data was there. So I had another one that I was working on. I'd take this one, and I'd take this one out, put it in the good one, the good computer, and then back it all up to a stick for her. And the thing is I've been in touch with the guy over here at South Coast Plaza, and he wanted to have a deal. We have these things like Robert was talking about, putting the drives in docks, and basically they have these devices and they're pretty cheap. You put the drive in the dock and you can connect it to USB, or you can connect it to eSATA, which is very fast. And what happens is you take and you can do that, but what happens is there's nothing for us to use to take and dock those solid state memory sticks internally of Apple's. They got a priority.
They didn't mention a trade name.
Proprietary. They have a proprietary setup. It looks like the drives you can go over, solid state drives you can get over at Micro Center, but the interface is proprietary. So basically, even if you could change it, the only place you can go to get it is from Apple. And when we try and recover people's hard drives by taking them out and putting them in a dock, that works. It's the standard. But there is no dock for us to put in those modules. Now what I did was, on this MacBook Pro, I had a 1 terabyte hard drive when it came out, a spinning hard drive. And then I said, well, I'm not using the optical drive anymore. So what I did was, they have a module that's exactly the shape of the optical drive. And what you can do is you can take a solid state drive, mount it in there properly, and the connections are all proper for you to replace that and put it in, replace the optical and put it in here. And now I've got 240 gigs of solid state that I use for booting and stuff like that. And everything else is split between those, the 1 terabyte drive split into 2 partitions. So it's just a whole different way of looking at stuff.
Let's see if we get here. So anyway, as SSDs, one of the most useful places for an SSD in my world is a computer where I'll have an SSD and a hard drive in there. And I'll run the operating system on the SSD, which allows for a very quick startup and very quick ability to do the analysis and such for what needs to be done, and then let the hard drives be able to be either and use them with RAIDs or do whatever you want, such you have the backup for the important stuff and the space for the important stuff with the speed for the operation of the computer. Yes, sir.
Is there software that will tell you when a hard drive is going bad before it goes bad?
Smart.
Smart, yeah.
Smart. That's what smart does.
The only thing it doesn't work on is
Where do you get that?
external
Pardon me?
drives. It only
Where do you
works
get
on
that?
internal.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Where do you get that smart?
Well, okay. If I jump over here to disk utility,
Built into the drive.
are we still showing the smart?
I don't think it shows it anymore.
It only applies to your internal
You'll have to go to About This
Yeah.
Mac.
It showed under, about this back.
Actually, it should be on the partition. Here we go.
There it is.
Smart status not supported at the partition level. Let's go up to the hard drive level, and I think it should be supported there. There we go.
Verify.
The smart status is verified on this particular drive. I first did it on the partition, which is where it's not. So it's verified. And so that's one of the things that Tech Tools shows you. It's constantly watching this. So I don't have to run it and look. It's verifying it and will let me know. By the way, it's failing smart checks. Yes, sir.
If you were to have an SSD drive that for some reason has had too many reads and writes, if you reformat it, would that let it start over, as it were, or is that drive just gone?
When they reach their limit, they're dead.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right. Drives are too freaking cheap to ever think about trying to. You want to recover from a drive, but you don't want to try to reuse it. If it's failing,
Yeah.
it's failing. You know.
Right. Okay.
You're right. There's no time.
It isn't worth the chance
No.
of losing your
No.
stuff.
So and to redo and try to recover it again a second time. So anyways, so this kind of stuff. This one, for instance, it should be DRW and it's DR blank, which means that the right bit, the right permission was missing on that file. So then it repaired it, and now it has the right attribute for that. So here's all the different things, and here's what it used to be, should be, blah, blah, blah. This is what the old disk utility used to do for you in the background. So now that it has fixed all of those, I'm now going to jump over for giggles over into Panorama, which has utility to check disk permissions. And okay, so let me go over and utilities, file permissions. That's really the one I wanted. And so now we're going to scan. And it's going to take a while. It's not really going to take that long. See, already it's telling me it's down to a minute. Basically, this is checking for, this makes a determined effort not to care so much about your operating system files, which is what TechTool Pro did and Disk Utilities did, and Apple does. This one actually checks more about your stuff. Because your stuff, probably you may care about more than the other stuff. Now, because if the program files are not correct, you won't be the computer won't be able to do what you want. But if your files are not properly set, you won't be able to do what you want to your stuff. And you kind of need them both. You need the operating system and the applications to be able to be proper, as well as you need your stuff to be able to be proper, because they work together. Microsoft Word, open this Word document. Two different items that both need to be checked. So the first one here, I was scanning with Panorama. It should take another 3 seconds. Blah blah blah. And so here's the results. And 171 have permission. 1,700 have permission problems that may cause problems for the current user. Blah blah blah. So I'll just say fix. And it wants my password. Yes. And
It said zero.
List of files.
I saw that. Saw that.
Now deleting the following.
Fix.
Boy. Everything. One of the things
There we
that
go.
Robert mentioned about by the way, about the smart status. I have 2 hard drive externals out here. They don't have smart status. Now, whether it's because of the
I think it only works on internal drives.
yeah, it only works on internal
Are those
drives.
user files up there or not?
Now, pardon me?
Are those your user files?
Well, let's look at them. Computer documents, RME type users, blah, blah, blah. So those are, yes, those are, I guess I have to use this tool maybe here, right, okay. These are my documents in my,
Okay, that's fine. Permission's wrong on one of them?
on 1,743 of them.
Okay, how does it know what they originally were so it could repair them?
It doesn't know what they originally were. It knows that, wait a second, based upon where this is, you probably want to be able to change these. You probably want to be able to edit these.
Since they're his
Permission
files, they
wise.
should reside within his directory.
That's correct. That's correct.
So if they're in your home folder, they should be writable.
Essentially correct, yes. That's right. I mean, they shouldn't be
Every once
locked
in a while,
up.
I get one that I can't write to, but I can fix that myself individually.
You can individually or do it 1,743 times. I'll prefer to use another tool.
I don't have a problem with 1,700 files.
Okay, I have better things to do about it. So anyway, so it's recognized all of these kinds of items, and these are items that, you know, I've recently used and all that kind of stuff, and so there it goes. It's I think it's the red that is currently is the boundary. Like I don't spend a lot of time getting overly deep and all that kind of stuff. I just recognize that when I've had problems, Panorama is actually more susceptible to not being able to adequately read the kinds of files that are with improper attributes. So that's why the developer of this program, of the database, created a utility to be able to remove all of those issues. It's a RAM-based program that reads files, puts it into memory, and then you operate on memory, and then writes it back out. So if things are not right, it gets kind of wiggy kind of quick. So anyways, this will take just a couple more minutes, but I'm gonna let this go and ask any other questions before we end the session this morning. Yes, sir.
A couple days ago, it came in an email from something called Imperia Encapsulata. We will protect your this from DDoS, distributed denial of service. So what the heck is that? So I looked on Wikipedia what that is, and I was horrified. Things that hackers can and do out there, and it's complicated. And is this something I need to worry about, or is this taken care of by those who run large services with these terabytes in these big buildings? Are they the ones to worry about?
DDoS, distributed denial of service, is not something you need to worry about. And you couldn't do anything about it if you wanted to.
Or your video temporarily shows up.
Sure. Okay. Because you couldn't do anything about it if you wanted to. It's kind of like, you know, there's a mudslide and there's hills coming down. You couldn't build a wall big enough to keep that mudslide from coming onto you. It's your ISPs that are taking care of this thing, because if it's hitting you, it has to pass through them. And for them to get to you, going through them, they're more concerned, because if the DDoS, which is aimed at you, hits them, all their customers are wiped out. So that particular item you can ignore. And what your ISPs, they basically, what they do is they funnel their traffic off at a certain load. They funnel their traffic off to go in different directions through other services that are able to take the additional traffic. And so instead we'll take this mudslide and divert it off into different rivers before it hits the building, is what they're doing.
Robert, here's
Yes.
a new one I got the other day, and I did screenshots of it because I've never seen this one before. Sure looks legit, doesn't it?
Yeah,
You're right.
Sure. But anytime, to immediately rectify and prevent data loss, call this number. Call toll free, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have no friends on the internet. No one's
Seconds
gonna
later,
come out.
seconds later, this one popped up.
Yeah, if you try
Yeah.
and get out of that window, Robert,
You can't.
you can't. You
You
have
can't
to
get out
force
there.
quit.
The only thing you can do is force quit Safari or
As
whatever.
quickly as you close it, it reopens it.
Robert, how can this stuff get through if you've got pop-ups? Isn't that a
Pop-up blocker?
yeah?
Well, it's not. It's not real. It's not everything that looks like a pop-up. It's not a pop-up.
Okay.
Pop-ups are a certain particular type of thing. If it's a window more than a pop-up, and so that's the way they're getting around that.
Oh,
But I'm going to throw this up there real quick before I vacate. Let's see if I can scan it from there, so we can see if we accomplished anything.
Give it a second.
Okay. Here we go. Look, that one's pretty. Okay, there we go. So it says 114 couldn't be scanned because of permission problems, but the other ones have been fixed, etc. So you see a whole less red here than there used to be a moment ago. So it has actually gone in there and done something. And now when you run it again, it'll show that, okay, those that were red before aren't. So it has actually fixed up. And if you run it, it'll show less there, and I've had less problems because of it. So it just happens to be one of a utility that does things. It doesn't use Apple's Unix utility to do stuff. When they use Tech2 Pro, they use the same program that Apple uses. So if you start with something weak, that's where you're going to get if you keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So anyway, couple other things there, nothing of any significance. Overall, it's an interesting tool. It's interesting to have in your toolbox, but don't think that it's going to be the be-all, end-all with proper maintenance and the things you need to do. I do like the fact that it can watch things. Here it is here, and in the system preferences, it shows what all it can do and what you can have it do for you. It can watch the history of your trash to be able to make things more easily able to be recovered. The volume usage, the amount of space you have left on it, the smart check. All of these different kinds of things that it can regularly check. The battery, the usage of the battery, if your battery is getting weak and needs to be replaced. So these are the kinds of things that it's checking. And it's recognizing. Right now I have 16% free. I can set it, it's going to tell me when I get down to 15. That kind of stuff. So there you go. It's an interesting tool. I wouldn't typically suggest that the average person ante up for the new version each and every time it comes out, because it's probably a waste of your money. I do it more because I kind of have to, because I don't like walking into a client and starting something up and go, wow, that's neat, that's new. And they've had it for a year or so.
Yes, you do it remotely. You're at home.
Yeah, so all of my comments are myself. I can't hear them. But what was it? I was having fun with Steve the other day because I had I mean, you guys, it probably is not quite the same, but I had a comment with Steve.
Oh,
No, not that one. Where did he go? Is he around here anywhere? There he is. I had a client and they had 640 megabytes of memory in this computer. I looked at that and I thought, okay, this is wrong, it's broken, it can't be, what's going on here? I haven't seen a computer with 640 megabytes of memory
Not since Mac
in
Plus.
many years.
Not since Mac Plus.
No, it was a Mac.
It was an iBook G4. And it's a computer that this person uses in their business. And then she was having some problems, and I said, I'm not going to work on this computer. She goes, why not? She goes, I said, because you're wasting your time. You're going to take all the money you could spend on paying me for it and go buy yourself a new computer. And I just wouldn't do it because it did not make any sense. I don't care what the problem was, the fact that she picked the phone to talk about this computer means that she's wasting her money. And so take that money and reinvest in it. It's a business.
And it's the same thing. I had a customer in Lake Forest that I've had for years. He had a G4 laptop, 17-inch, really nice. And then he went out, I says, you got to get a new computer. So he got one of those real thin-edged iMacs. So he's got that, but I got to keep this one running. I've got some files. And the thing is, if he got files, you gotta take the time to consult with someone like Robert or me or Greg and see, can those files be updated, converted, and then stop using these old stuff, because he wants me to get his original operating system and everything back on that G4, and I have 3 sets of original installation discs from Apple for the hard drive, for the operating system, and what happens is none of them will boot, because back in the PowerPC days, each CD had to have a certain little niche or a certain little driver to be able to read it. And it got to be so crazy. And now with 10, you don't have that problem. You know?
All right, so before I leave, I'll leave one comment. If you do have a drive that you're not able to read, and you've tried this tool, this tool, this tool, this tool, do not give up. If there's something really, 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 really important in there, check with me, check with Steve. I'm working with Drive Savers, perhaps the best in the industry at recovering data. If you have a drive that you need to get something off, and you've tried everything in the world, it can be gotten off. Check with us, we'll help you get a good discount on their services. All right?
They,
Pretty good.
Thank you.
You know, I've talked with them last week, and they're not quite ready yet. I'm as anxious as you are because they.
We keep Steve quiet for the first hour.
Yeah, it would. It might. It might.
Yeah.
Greg's going to take over with time capsule and time machine. Awesome. Thank you.
Can I just start reading those?
We're paying big money for that. You're picking up that.
Oh God, if you don't stop it. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
The computer's doing something and I'm trying to figure out.
It's only here for now.
Yeah, and those of us are here for 3 hours.
Okay.
You can ask one of these guys.
Anyway,
If you wanna talk for a minute or so, Steve?
no, I'm gonna. I might say something.
Decent service.
I might say something wrong.
Well, be
Why
sure
you
to
took it
say
from them? You know, who?
The guy who runs it.
No, you didn't. It was asked.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, we know that these guys are gonna move, we don't know where or when or anything about that, we think it's in October, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully by September or the 1st of October, we'll know what the deal is, so. All right, let's talk a little bit about Time Machine. As Robert was saying, this is a built-in utility that you should be taking advantage of if you're not. The first thing you want to do is get yourself an external drive. In fact, when you first plug a blank drive in, if you don't presently have Time Machine already running on your computer, it's probably going to bug you. Do you want to use this drive as Time Machine? No, I don't want to use this drive. The next time you plug another drive in, you want to use this drive as Time Machine because it knows you're not currently using it. So once you've got a drive set up, I've got this one that you see down here in the lower right, or lower left, and I'll explain it in a moment. Once you pick the drive, and you're better off, you can back up to the same drive, believe it or not. You can partition it, you don't even have to partition it. You can back up all your files onto the same drive. The logic behind that is kind of stupid. The reason being, if the drive goes, you've lost your copy and your original, right? So what you want to do is you want to have an external drive of some sort. And it just has to be seen by the Mac. Whether it be it could be done through Bluetooth, but that distance is pretty limited. Or whether it's USB bound, in this particular case, I've got one that I brought with me, a 1 terabyte solid state that I've been using for the last month or so to show you what I'm going to do here. Or you might have a time capsule at home. Time capsule is Apple's Airport Extreme with a hard drive built into it. That's it. They use the buzzword time capsule because it's got a disk drive built into it. I have one of those. I got 2 of those at home. I've got the most current one, and I've got an older one that I've had for years that I actually upgraded myself. Tore it apart, put a bigger drive. I bought it with a small drive in it. Tore it apart and put a bigger drive in it. One of the advantages that has is not only is it a wireless router, but it also supports a pseudo version of what you probably heard before, NAS, Network Address Storage. it has a USB port on it where you can plug other USB devices into it, including additional drives. So that gives you the ability to not only back up to the drive that's built inside the time machine, time capsule, whatever you want to, the Airport Extreme, but also to add data onto the other drives as well, either when this one gets full or just use it as other available wireless drives, all attached to that same mechanism. I'll explain that what I'm doing with that in a moment. Anyway, let's go through the process. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to end up with a drive. They cost nothing. I mean nothing. You can buy a 1 terabyte non-solid state probably for about $40 right now, 40 to 50 bucks. In fact, I saw at the most recent Costco ad that came to me maybe a month ago, they had a 5 terabyte USB drive for like $139.
I was there the other day, they had 8.
Inside in the store?
Yeah.
See, I've got 4 2 terabyte drives at home. One just recently died on me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, and the only reason I did that, they were all basically this size here. But that's a 1 terabyte, they were 2 terabytes. And 2 of them were full of movies, one's full of TV shows, the other one's got my music on it. And I've reached the point now where I'm running out of space again. So I'll probably stop by on the way home or whatever and get a couple of 5 terabyte ones and then repurpose those for something else.
And I'll see you on quarters next week. It's like we said when we went from the Apple IIs to the Macs, oh, I'm not going to hang on to software and stuff that I don't use. We're still doing that. Music and movies.
Well, it's not so bad anymore because one of the nice things about if you do buy through, and it's probably true of Amazon or anybody else, if you buy movies or music from Apple, you always have access to it at a later time.
Right.
So yesterday, right now is that's why I've got that picture up there from Star Trek: The Final Frontier up there on the screen, since this is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek right now. It's hard to believe a show that got canceled after 3 years is done this well, hasn't it? 14 movies later, not too shabby. I had a heck of a time trying to get this image to sort of fit the screen. It's too low a res, but it was off of Google Images. I figured I'd use it. Kirk supposedly climbing El Capitan, but it's really a wall sitting up in the parking lot. but it was cool. They pulled it off well. But one of the things that I decided to treat myself, got an early birthday gift. I bought for $59. You can buy the first 11 Star Trek movies. That's about $5 a movie in HD. And I already had the movies. I had acquired them somewhere along the line. Some of them off of DVDs that I had gotten, or even off of Laserdisc. But the main reason why I wanted them through iTunes is because iTunes has gotten very aggressive about adding the additional stuff like the DVDs and Blu-rays have. The behind-the-scenes making of how they did this special effect. I'm really a fanatic about crap like that. The interviews, all that stuff. And I've spent the last couple of days, probably 10, 15 hours, not watching the movies. I've watched them all recently, like in the last week. But just go through and look at all the extra crap. It's really amazing what's there. And the nice thing is, in the old days of iMovies, when Apple first started doing this, you would actually get a separate file that had the extras on it. So you'd buy the movie, maybe it'd be a typical HD movie's about 4 gig. So you'd get the movie, and then you'd also get maybe another 500 or 600 megs worth of, it had the identifier ITE, iTunes Extras, on it. Another file. And so you had 2 physical files sitting up there all the time, if you kept a local copy. Nowadays, they don't do that. They don't send you down, they don't automatically give you the iTunes Extras. Instead, if you download the movie to keep a local copy of it, and you go to watch the extras, you're playing the extras via streaming, just like you would through Apple TV or through your computer or iPhone or iPad. That's coming directly from Apple servers. I was a little bummed about that when they first did that, and then I realized the logic behind it. The logic behind it is they can update it as often as they want to. So consequently, I had a couple of the Star Trek movies that I bought off of DVD with behind-the-scenes type junk that I would watch. It's usually lower res. And I would watch that, and now I'm looking at it in iTunes, the iTunes version that I just got the other day. There's all kinds of additional stuff. So one of the advantages of Apple hosting that is if somebody passes away, like in the case of Leonard Nimoy or whatever it is, they can put a tribute in there that they put together in a matter of like the last week or so and add it at their site, and you get it automatically on your site. That's kind of cool. So now the space hasn't gotten so critical for me because I went through and I deleted all the Star Trek movies that I had, with the exception of the most two recent ones, the new J.J. Abrams ones, and went ahead and bought the $59 one so that I could get new reference pointers inside my iTunes that I could click on, and if I wanted to watch the movie, at least until I get some more disk drives, if I wanted to have a local copy of the movie, but if I just wanted to watch it, I could still stream it down to the Mac. So it's not as critical as it used to be. It's kind of nice from that standpoint. Okay, anyway, back to time capsule. So let's go into system preferences. We've plugged a blank drive supposedly in, and we're going to open up time machine application. And right off the bat, you can see big on and off switch. I'm going to go ahead and authorize this so that I can dink with it. Okay, so I can turn the time machine utility off and on as need be. If you had multiple drives plugged in, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a drive that's got a bunch of different partitions on it, just so you can see what that would do. And give this a moment to come up. And you can see that once there's additional drives available, I can go through and I can select a different drive to be my time machine backup. These are starting to populate. There should be one there called future or blank. There we go. You see right, this one up here has got 48 gig. Here, future OS, 49 gig, future OS. You can see I'm planning ahead down the road. But right now I can click on the select disk option here, and you can see all those drives that could be backup drives. Let's say as an example, this one here, I can select it and say use this disk. I'm not going to do it. It's only 50 gigs because they're for something else. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the time machine backup. Appropriately, Apple renames it to time machine backup. And it normally would mount here on your desktop. It doesn't have to, as long as it's available, it will work. Okay, what can you do with this? It will back everything up by default. There's a few files that by default it will leave out. It will normally leave out system files. You can see they're showing up right away. I'm going to go ahead and take these out just so we don't have to look at them. Otherwise it gets a little busy here.
Which disk is the time machine associated on? Your hard disk?
It had the time machine program or the time machine backup.
No, the machine, the actual time machine you're backing up to.
Oh, it's this external drive right here.
Okay.
Rick, on that, did you explain that when you go to options and they have that list of drives of things to ignore or not to back up?
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Yeah. Works like a, adding printers. Same concept.
Okay, so one of the drawbacks is that this is a 500 gig solid state drive that's inside this Mac. That's 500 gig. Or excuse me, that's a terabyte. Not a whole bunch of backup stuff in there, but what all do you want to back up? Well, let's come through here and take a look. And by the way, you can see that this drive actually has two partitions on it. If I go into disk utility, you can see it. There's one partition called 1011, that's a copy of El Capitan on a 70 gig partition, and then the balance of this 1 terabyte drive, 900 or so, or whatever the hell it is, well 902 it says, is what I'm using for backup. And there's a reason why I did that. Apple claims that on Yosemite and El Capitan, you can't boot to a complete time machine backup, but you can recover an operating system off of it. I've tried it, I've never gotten it to work properly. They used to not do that at all. So my logic behind having a backup was twofold. One, to cover my butt in case something goes wrong. And the second one, when I'm ready to upgrade to the next operating system, I can go ahead and do this because I know I've got a correct backup. Hey, Rob.
On that time machine backup, the history, if you've upgraded your operating system in the meantime, is it possible to go back and restore the old operating system from the time machine backup?
If you've backed up the old operating system, Apple claims you can. Like I said, I've never had any real success with it.
It'll only have the files at that date. It won't have any files that you've added since then. If you went to that older backup with the older operating system.
That I don't know, since I've never tried it. To me, since this space is cheap, I would take a drive and partition it with multiple operating systems on it, like I've done here. In fact, if we go into disk utility, you'll see what I did. If I come take a look at that, here it is, it's Initech Media. There's two partitions. There's the time machine backup. That's the one that's, you can see right away it's got 526 gigs still available. But its physical size of the 1 terabyte, 902 megabytes of, 902 gigabytes is available. And then there's a partition called OACC 1011. Like I said, the reason I did that was twofold. One is I can always put a later operating system on this all by itself. I find that I screw up the operating system with all the junk that I'm doing more often than anything else. I came to a meeting one time and I couldn't get anything to work. The computer wasn't working. And luckily I had a drive with a copy of the operating system on it. I booted to that drive and I was able to go ahead and do it. All the data files were okay, it's just the operating system was squirrely on my internal drive. So I chose to go ahead and break this into the two partitions, a small one for a full copy of 1011. Now it may be slightly out of date with updates and stuff like that, but I can always get that updated from Apple. And I can boot to this drive. That was the main reason why I did this. If I hold down the command, if I hold down the option key during reboot, I'll get the options over there that other drive will show up that I can boot to 1011. So in case I've got a problem, I've got that to fall back on. So I don't need to back up the operating system in Time Machine. Why? I already have a backup of it on a separate partition. That's more functional for what I want to do. So in this options list that you see here on this first page, you can see right there I'm excluding the 10.11 partition. It's only 26 gigs, but why back up something I've already got a copy of? It seems kind of redundant. And I'm also not backing up applications. My logic behind that is space. I've only got a 1 terabyte drive. If I had a 2 terabyte drive, I might back up applications because chances are it's only going to back up, let's say, Microsoft Word one time. And then it might incrementally back up little pointer files that maybe I've made a change to the default font or a default color or my page layout or whatever it is. So it would catch that on the next backup. Since I have all these files, since I have all these applications already backed up on other drives, it seemed kind of pointless. And I wanted to have, for this purpose, I wanted to get as much as I could on inside this drive. So if I wanted to add something else, and here's one that I would do. If I was going to back up applications, but I'm using VirtualBox or Parallels or Fusion to allow me to run another operating system within the Mac operating system, I've showed that in the past, where you can run Windows, or you can run Linux or whatever it is, not boot directly to it, although you can do that, but you can run it as a Macintosh window. When you quit those programs, it takes that Windows world, if you want to think of it, let's say you got 50 gigabytes set aside for Windows 7 as an example. When you quit Fusion or Parallels or VirtualBox or whichever one of those utilities you're working, it compresses that down into a single giant file. So when you look inside your applications file, you'll see the program that starts it. When you look inside your home directory, because I was the one who added it, there's a 50 gig file in there called Windows 7, which I may only be using 20 gigs of that 50 gig. It's just that it's an environment that it's set apart. If I let Time Machine back that up, it'll back it up every time. It'll make a copy every time. And the reason being, just the fact that you've opened up that Windows partition has updated the file. So if I was using that Windows or Parallels or whatever you want to call it on a regular basis and quitting out of it and going on and doing something else, next time Time Machine would make, it'd make a complete copy of that 50 gig file. Because it doesn't know that you've only changed one item inside there. It sees that you've updated the pointer on it.
So parallels would be on that list of don't back up.
You bet. If I had Parallels still on this computer, I've got it on an external drive right now. If I had Parallels or Fusion or VirtualBox on here, it would be on my exclude list. Now to add stuff to it, it's real easy. All you do is click typical Mac. All you do is just click here. Let's say as an example, maybe I don't want to back up the downloads file. Because usually when you download stuff, it goes into your downloads directory and it stays there. You double click it from there and you install it in applications or you do whatever you want. And if you're like me, you probably forget to take it out of downloads. So before you know it, you've got well, you can see right now, I've got 10 gigs of stuff sitting in downloads.
Right.
Why would I want to back up downloads when I can just download it again? So that would be another good one to take out there. By the way, you see that little symbol right there in front of the tilde?
Mm-hmm.
The tilde is the Unix world way of saying your home directory. So this will back up this is backing, by default, this is backing up my wife's partition on here. Never uses it. She's got her own Mac. And it's backing up the OACC partition on here. If I didn't want to back up OACC's home directory files, again, I would do the same thing. I'd click on plus. I would go over here to Macintosh HD, into users, and there's the users that are here. There's me, there's guest, there's Marcia, there's OACC, and there's Sharon. So I might want to click on that one and say exclude. And I might want to go ahead and add Marcia in here because again, she's got her own computer, she'll never get around to using it. This over here. So if I just want to be as efficient about this as possible, and I probably don't care about guest, I might want to exclude guest out of it as well. Is this making sense? So you can come through here and customize this list for anything that you want to take out of there. The two movies that I showed earlier, I don't really need to back those up. By default, they're in my movies directory. If I was going to be carrying a lot of those, since they came off of YouTube, if I was going to be keeping a lot of those movies on my Mac, I'd probably exclude that directory, figuring it's stuff I can get to. I don't need to back up stuff I can get to. So I'm worried about the stuff I can't get to. After this gets a chance to look over here, it tells you the estimated size of a full backup right now is 342.35 gigabyte. So if this was completely blank, if I had nothing on here, and I did an initial Time Machine backup, the first file would be 342 gigs in size. Then 1 hour later, Time Machine looks and says, oh, you've updated your desktop file. You added a couple of images. You added a couple of things on your desktop. Again, another one I may or may not want to back up. Steve wants to back it up because he keeps everything on his desktop. Me, I notoriously keep it in. Desktop is part of your home folder, so it's still backed up in your home directory.
Yes.
But I may not, if I'm just using it as a temporary holding spot, maybe I don't want to back that up. So there's a lot of different opportunities that you had to go through here to make this backup drive as functional and as usable without having to buy an excessively large one. I'd say the good rule of thumb is at least double what you want to back up. At least double.
Yeah.
Triple would be better. So if you've got a 500 gig internal drive, and by the way, this can back up external files as well. You can exclude those if you want to. I would definitely do that. I just chose to put it on this one because we get the most speed out of it as well. Okay.
Do they understand, Greg, about the fact that it's 342 gigabytes for the initial?
For a complete copy. And then it's a fraction of what it'll be from there on after. And by the way, the first backup is usual slow.
Yeah.
It's not so bad on a USB when it's directly connected, but if you're doing it across airport or something like that, it's going to be really slow. Turn it on and let it go. The way Time Machine by default, and I've got an option for that as well. The way Time Machine works by default, after it's made the initial backups, is approximately every hour, it will scan and look and see what files have changed since the last backup, and just back those files up. It's using a process in the Unix world called rsync, and it's doing it on an incremental basis. So that's how it works. Now, it's better from the rsync standpoint because Apple maintains a library of what was incremental. A true rsync, if you do it, doesn't do that. It just updates whatever needs to be updated, and that's it. So we're coming up on 11 o'clock. I would do a full backup. It's done at noon. It would run again at 1. It would run again at 2. It would run again 3, 4, 5 on down the road. It keeps by default a week's worth of hourly backups if you have the space. Then it keeps a weekly backup and a monthly backup. Basically, it's integrating those to be. So as you start running short of disk space, and you have to get down to about the last 50 gigs or so, as you start running low on disk space, it starts deleting the oldest files that are there, that it sees that you've got remember, they're older versions of what you've got, theoretically. You're always going to keep the latest version no matter what. It starts deleting off the oldest version, because if you haven't touched it in 60 days, safe bet you're probably not going to need it again. That's another advantage of having a bigger hard drive. It will always maintain a most recent full copy, most recent month's full copy, most recent week's full copy once it goes beyond that. But it may not have and it'll always have at least a 7 or 14 days worth of hourly backups to come back to. Like I said, it'll just get rid of the older junk as needed if it needs to do it, because you're running out of space. And you'll get warnings. You'll get a message that'll pop up on your screen that says, getting low on disk space, I'm going to delete some stuff. I'm going to delete some of the older files on here. Now there's an option for you laptop users. See this right here, backup while on battery power? I choose to leave that unchecked. If I'm on battery power, either there's something very wrong at home, or I'm out walking around, I don't want it fooling around. I don't want to waste the battery anymore. I tend to run this Macintosh full blown, so they say, hey, you get all day battery life. I get maybe 3 hours because I run it with the maximum brightness and the maximum speed, all that junk. That's just me.
Okay.
Okay, any questions at this stage? You had one there, sorry.
Yeah, is there any advantage to take an extra external hard drive and use SuperDuper to make a bootable backup?
Sure. Convenience in case something goes wrong. You've got it right now. But that's only as accurate as when you made the backup. Does that make sense?
Right. I do this, and I do it like maybe once a month.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because you've always got the option to, if you're running both, like I'm at home, I'm running Time Machine, I'm running Carbonite, and I'm using iCloud. Now at the moment, I'm paying for the 50 gigs of space on iCloud right now, $3 a month or whatever the hell it is. And the reason for that is because I want a full copy of my pictures and movies or whatever it is, and we're going to go on a cruise here in October, and whatever. I'm trying to plan ahead. Whatever I capture on this phone, or whether I get a new phone, I don't know. Whatever I capture on this phone, when I get back to the cruise at night or whatever it is, I'll probably back it up onto my iPad so that I can free up space on the iPhone. I may be carrying a couple of spare batteries with me too. I've already run them down a couple of times experimenting. And then I've got a little transfer stick that's USB 3 on one end and Lightning on the other end. That's 128 gigs, so I can shove junk onto that to save, to move it over here. That's a faster way of doing it. And because I don't know what I'm going to have as far as Wi-Fi access without paying for it, to be able to get it up to the iCloud. So when we get into Boston, I'm sure a couple of the hotels we're going to be staying at are going to have Wi-Fi access. I'll offload everything into iCloud if I can right then. But I've come up with 3 or 4 different extra storage options for me just in case. But I want to make sure I have that room available. So I thought, well, I might as well go ahead and get the 50. Right now, my photos are around 28, 29 gigs, so it's going to be on the minimum. I'll probably have to bump it up to 200 sometime around that point in time. I just want to make sure I've got my butt covered. You know, $1,300, $1,400 for the cruise is nothing compared to another $20 a month to get that storage. And whether I'll keep it or not, or whether I'll just offload it all onto a couple of external drives at some future point, I don't know. So I've got multiple backups going right now. Now, Carbonite, which I like, you see right now it's doing a Time Machine backup right now. Carbonite, which I like, only backs up whatever's on your internal drive. It's about $60 a year. It's not the cheapest solution. You could have a 10 terabyte drive that's in your internal drive, and that's the same rate. They only cover what's on your internal drive. but it has saved my bacon one time when I did something really, really stupid. And so I really tout the winning advantage of having an off-site backup of some sort. And I would use Apple's iCloud more, even though it's not cheap, but it doesn't back everything up. It only backs up Apple stuff and a few others, backs up Dropbox and a couple others that have signed the agreement deal with Apple or whatever it is. So I'm sure Apple's got some little funky things about that as about what they can and can't do. So where I really use Super Duper, weird as this sounds, I own both Super Duper and I own Carbon Copy Cloner. I like them both. Both have a free version. The free version can back up drive A to drive B, make a clone of it. When I say clone, that's exactly what it is. It's a mirror image of it. So we mentioned a little earlier, one of the advantages of pulling files off of an external drive to bring them back over is you make them unfragmented or defragmented. But it doesn't work that way with a clone. A clone copies sector by sector, so it's a mirror image. All you care about is whatever the quickest way of getting the data over there.
Oh yeah, but when you restore that clone, the process of restoring it will defragment.
No, it doesn't. Not if you use it. Not if you use the cloning tool. If you have it pull file by file, yes, it will. Bet your money on that one, Ralph.
I've done it.
I've done it for the last 30 years on big systems. If it's being done as a clone, it's a clone. So if I clone the internal drive, as fragmented as it might be, and that's not really an issue nowadays anymore, clone it to an external drive, and then at some later point, I take and clone that back to the internal drive, clone it. It's exactly the same as what the original was or what that clone is. Now, if I choose to pull the files off, like the regular file drag, copy, that kind of a process, I'll use the old terminology. If I've got something that's pulling the file by file by file that way, that's different. Because now it's using the directory structure to pull the files over with. If I'm using the sector by sector copy, it's making a clone copy. So I'm getting whatever, believe it or not, you're also getting whatever disk errors are there as well. So that's just the way cloning works, yes.
Great. Since you're not backing up everything on Time Machine, how do then, when you need to use it to bring your work back to your hard drive?
A full restore or just an incremental file?
Pardon?
A full restore?
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing I would do is I would obviously let's say this is a fresh drive. So for whatever reason I downloaded it off of Apple's website because I still have access to the internet. I downloaded it off of Apple's website. Now I'm up and running with all the Apple junk, for lack of another term, right? In my case, I would normally, my drive at home is a 5 terabyte drive, so it's not a problem. I do backup applications. I didn't do it on this one because it was filling it up too quickly, and I wanted to be able to demonstrate data backup, not program backup. So on the one at home, I could pull the applications that way because it's got the applications backed up. Inside, when you install your operating system on there, you'll come to a spot that says, where do you want to retrieve your files from? An external drive, another copy, a Time Machine backup. When you click on Time Machine backup, it goes to your Time Machine, in this case this one, and it looks and gets the latest version, because that's obviously what you would normally want, the latest version of any file and restores it back onto your system. That will be in a clean format because it's doing it on a file-by-file basis. If you choose to put the operating system on here, that uses a program that Apple calls Data Migration Assistant. If you're up and running on the Mac and you choose not to restore the files right away and you bail out of this, at a later time when you're ready to go back in and restore a file, come on, where's it at? interesting. There's a program that's rat-holed on your Mac in the utilities folder called Data Migration Assistant, which is what the install program is all about.
Oh, just called migration.
Migration assistant.
Oh, Migration Assistant, that's why. Sure, it's gonna kill everything that's going on. Well, anyway, here we go. So you can see right there, it's, am I gonna pull the files from a Mac, a Time Machine backup, or a startup disk, or from a Windows PC, or to another Mac? So those are your options that you have with the Data Migration Assistant. This is called automatically when you install a new operating system. If you don't, if the drive that you're putting it on is completely blank, and you've done a format, and you've installed a new operating system on there, it'll automatically call that up to try to continue on. Yes?
Is this what Apple uses when you go in and buy a new computer and give them your old one to transfer everything?
I think they've got a faster way, but essentially, yes. I think they're doing it, I know they're doing it all on a solid state to get the most possible speed out of it, so. And Steve's been in the same boat where I've gone out and worked on somebody's iMac, and I back the files up and I'm pulling back over, and what I didn't realize is their iMac is a USB 1 or a USB 2. Big difference in speed transfer for files. And so what you thought would have taken, hey, I made that copy this morning, it only took me 30 minutes. It's taken me 4 hours there because the data transfer is just that way, that's just the way it is. So obviously better if I could pick the machine up or be doing something else whilst I'm there or whatever it is, or if I've got something in the area, I said, this is gonna take about 3 hours, I'll come back. See that? Because I don't want to just be sitting there charging them or sitting around staring at a screen. I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, so now we've got our Time Machine backup utility and it's running. Let's talk about how you restore files. Well, let's go take a look at it. For example, you can have Time Machine in the menu bar up here at the top. You can put it over here in the dock. I find it convenient in the dock. And you'll get this effect right away. And this is kind of interesting. I should have pointed that out. Let me cancel out of this. You can see I'm currently at my desktop. So it does a couple of things for you that are there's ways to speed it up. I'm on my desktop right now. So when I start up Time Machine, it defaults to my desktop. And you can see right now as I'm looking back at the older ones here, see it's starting to populate the dates and times in there. As I scroll through these, and look over here where it says today, it's showing the time frame. But I'm still looking at stuff that was on my desktop. Maybe that's not what I wanted. What I wanted was in my home directory. So let's go to Gregory Locke here. And now I'm at 525. I'm not the most recent one because why? I started out that way. So I can either come back over and click on the down arrow to go later, or I can actually come over here and scroll through this.
This is exactly what I did with the membership list.
That's a little faster.
Yeah.
So the trick is, as far as I'm concerned, is let's say as an example, you've decided that, well, we'll do it. Let's cancel out of this. Let's go into the movies. I showed that, here we go, the Zimmer one, that's pretty small size. Let's take that 18 one. That was the My Generation one with the older folks there playing music. And we want to restore that file. If I go to the place where I want the file to be restored, it saves me a few moments of time. So now if I click on Time Machine, it's going to default to users Gregory Locke's movies, because that's where I am right now, and Time Machine's making the assumption that's where you want to restore files to.
Does it save things in your trash?
Yes, by default, because the trash is part of your own directory. So there it is right there. There's Zimmer's movie that I just deleted. a moment ago, and I'm gonna click on restore. There it is.
It's that easy. It's,
Now, let's do that again, and I'll explain why. Maybe you want more than one version of it. Now, there won't be any difference, but let's go back.
What is that orange dot to the left of the date on the OACC entry there?
Oh, it's just a label.
oh, Greg, the dot next to date modified, that is.
Oh, a label, or well, they used to call them labels, now they're called tags. So you can, it's a keyword that's searchable, so I chose anything that was OACC, since it's the Orange Apple Computer Club, I picked the color orange. You can set that in Finder Preferences. That's another way of searching for stuff, I don't use it very much.
Instead of highlighting the whole line like they used to do, which I liked.
I like that, I like that better personally, it's easier to see.
And then they do this now, but the thing that's nice about the dots is you can have multiple dots. So
Right, you couldn't do that
they lay it
before.
on top of each other.
So let's say an example, if I can have something that's, maybe I'm using one of the color tags for photos, and I'm using a tag for personal, and I'm using a tag for OACC, and that particular file or folder meets all three requirements, all three dots can show up.
And then would it be right next to one
Right next to
another?
each other, yeah.
But they just overlap.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you restore it back, will that then, time machine show it in its restored position?
Yes, it shows that date and time.
But do you have to do anything before it restores it?
If there was nothing there, no. If I click on restore right now, give it a moment here. Remember, in this particular case, there was already a copy there.
And that- in
This
other
may,
words, what
this
I'm
may be
asking,
bright enough to figure out that it's
once
exactly
you
the same.
restore this, do you have to do anything to that file for it to go on time machine again?
No, it's there.
It's
It's,
there.
it's in the area that you're backing up, it's gonna back it up again. Yeah, it's recognizing that it's an exact copy.
Spinning beach ball of death.
Pardon?
The spinning beach ball of death.
Yeah, it doesn't know any better. Oh, there we go, that's what I was hoping for. The location which you're storing already exists, you wanna keep the original, you wanna keep both, or you wanna replace it. If I keep both, it automatically assigns the word original to the one that was there. So you could have 5 or 6 or 50 or whatever versions, because it's gonna add an original 1, original 2, original 3, or copy 1, copy 2, copy 3. It's gonna give a unique date. They're both gonna have the same date and time because it was the exact same file. All I've done is just waste more disk space. But I really like the fact that I can get in and get to, if I know I want to restore something that's in my documents folder, then I can just go into my home directory. Or, there we go, I've got a shortcut here in my documents folder. And let's say an example, it's here under, okay, system administrator card, I've trashed that for whatever reason. And now I'll go ahead and go into Time Machine. It will default to my documents directory, nice time saver. I'm already there by just doing a little pre-thought. Got what I called it. Well, that should be. Advantage of having it still here in the trash, I can go back and look at the name. Oh, it's actually got my name. Gee, that would have been smart.
You're looking at date modified. There you go.
that is just too useful of a utility to work
It's
with.
really super. I mean,
So I have, I'm not doing as much with my computer as I was when I was working up until a few months ago. But I have found that extremely useful to be able to come back and pull stuff off. Now I can do the same thing with carbonite, because carbonite is keeping a current backup. It's not an incremental, but it's a current backup. But it's a little slower getting it off of carbonite, and I'd rather have a local copy if I can do that anytime. The carbonite is just to cover my butt when I've really done something stupid.
Greg, when I get a chance, go back to downloads, and there we go. Okay, and by name. Okay, what I find on many people's computers, okay, there you got it right there to show. See where it says OACC announced email August 2016 CSV, and the one above it CS-1 CSV? Basically, those are duplicate files, and
Apple will append a -1, -2,
right,
-3.
and so anytime you download something and you think you didn't get it, you download it again, all it's gonna do is so anytime you have a download that has 5 different deals, look for the one that has no line and keep that one and throw the rest away. Because so many times I find on people's computers, they got multiple dash things, and all
Well,
it is.
especially in the downloads folder, that's a real common place for it to
That's
end up
where
in
it
me.
usually happens.
Steve sent me something, Steve sent that to me a couple of days ago or whatever. Well, you can see August 3rd. And
Oh, we were having trouble.
we were doing it
with the server.
over messages, or what used to be called iChat. So he sent me the file and he sent me a message about, hey, there it is. And I had it partially scrolled off the screen so I didn't see it. So when I finally scrolled down there, I saw that I clicked on the down arrow and I didn't pay attention and I clicked on it a second time, so it gave me 2 copies. Better to have 2 than none.
Yeah.
Now, can you just go into the downloads file and delete everything that's in there?
Sure. If you've, most files that you have are, if they're a program and you double click them to install them, like in the case I put a newer version of GIMP on here earlier this morning, because for whatever reason the version I had here was corrupted, so while Robert was here, I downloaded a new copy of GIMP. I can safely trash that one, but by default, remember GIMP is the graphic image manipulation program, right, which we'll talk about in a moment. You can see it's just here, it's just mounted the temporary disk image or whatever it is on my desktop. If I trash it, it's gone. So I've got to be sharp enough to drag it to applications or wherever I want to put it.
But once you launch it, it does that automatically, and then you can get rid of it, right?
Well, in this particular case, if I went to run it right from here, it's still in this disk image mounted on my desktop. So if I trash the base file, or in fact, if I try to delete this right now, if I try to delete this because GIMP is running, and then go to empty trash, I get an error because it shows that the file's open, because that disk image is mounted on the desktop. So in that particular case, what you've got to do, and this is rare, GIMP is, since it's made by the, I want to say GNU License Management or whatever it is. It's not owned by a Microsoft or an Adobe or whatever it is. Those people write installers to be able to actually put the program in the application folder. Or they come up with a little dialog window that says drag me, and they'll have an alias of your application folder, and you drag it to the application folder. That makes sense. In this particular case, this is a program written by individuals, for individuals, that works on Windows, Linux, Macintosh, Atari, works on all these different platforms out there. And you know what? They didn't care. They just really wanted, since it's being done as a freebie, they just really wanted to get the program on your computer. You have to put a little logic into, if it doesn't have a place to click here to install or whatever it is, you have to put a little thought into dragging it off. You can see it's going to make a copy here on my desktop. I've already installed it in applications.
What's GIMP do?
GIMP is a graphic image manipulation program that heck, the name GIMP, what a dumb name. And it is a Photoshop alternative. So if you're looking for a cheap photo editor, you can't get any cheaper than free.
Like Roberto's graphic converter.
Yep, like that. But instead of paying 50 or 60 bucks for that, for a graphic converter, GIMP's free.
Find a GIMP.
Well, that could be a little politically incorrect, I guess. It never bothered me, and I have one, so.
So it's free then?
It is free. Now, if you already own graphic converter, it's probably kind of redundant to have both. Let's go in and talk about it. Any more questions on Time Machine
Yeah,
before we
let's
move
check
on?
Time Machine.
Yes, sir.
On this time machine, this that you just have right now, okay, if in the future you have one of your movie external hard drives, let's say number 8, you stick it in there to watch a movie, will Time Machine try to copy that?
So is the movie added to your internal drive?
No. You have an external hard drive, movies, number 8.
No, it won't, by default, it won't do external drives. You have to kind of tell it to do it.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay.
By default, it's designed to just do internal stuff.
Because I have a Mac Mini, and I bought a 1 terabyte external hard drive for doing that. And I thought it was automatically default, only the internal hard drive. But
Well, you notice when we go back and look at that, when I plug this external drive in here with all these other partitions, if I can find the USB slot, jeez. There we go. So let's go look at system preferences again.
Greg,
Yes, sir.
just to let you know, there's also a free app called Time Machine Editor.
I'm going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, when I click on, you saw all these other drives,
Yeah.
partitions populate.
Right.
By default, when I click on options, notice it automatically added to the exclude list.
Okay. Well.
If I wanted to back up this one called 10.5, I have to come over here and click minus. By default, external drive plugged in automatically goes into the exclude list. You have to subtract them out of the exclude list, because it figures it's probably temporary.
I see. Because I have like 5 external hard drives, where 2 of them are always hooked up. The other 3 are based upon what I want to work on.
Okay,
And after a few months, I noticed that my time machine was full. And I didn't.
filled up too quick.
Yes, and I didn't expect it to see that.
Yeah.
And then when I clicked on that time machine, all my 5 external hard drives showed up there.
Yeah, unfortunately, obviously you can go into preferences right now, go into options and with them all plugged in, exclude them, see if they're all on the exclude list.
Yeah.
They should be by default. But if at any point in time you unselected it, I did a minus check, the next time I would plug it back in, it would remember that. Because then each drive, even though you have a generic name on it, each drive's got a hard-coded invisible name on it, okay? And that's what it's actually going by. So if I plug in, I've got an external drive called Movies 1, and I plug it right now, and it comes up and it says Movies 1 is on the exclude list. And I go subtract that off the exclude list because I want it to back up Movies 1, okay? And then I unplug Movies 1 at some point in time or whatever it is, and then I plug it back in. It remembers I had given permission Movies 1 to be backed up. I have to manually go in there and add it or subtract it to get it out of that remembrance stage. Now here's one drawback that, and it's true of our sync in itself. If you've got stuff that's backed up on this drive, like I had applications, I was backing up applications because I hadn't thought anything about it. Remember, this is only a 1 terabyte, and I quickly within about 2 weeks I was running out of space because that's like 300 gigs worth of stuff. And I realized, oh, I don't need to back up applications, not for the purpose of this demo. there's no way to go into Time Machine and modify it that I know of. There probably is, because if you ever look at Time Machine, it's just one giant file. You'd have to go through it, each one of these is the incremental backup. You'd have to go through there and look for every one of them and delete those out. Could you do it? Sure. I'm sure Apple's got some convenient way of solving that problem. In my case, what I chose to do was start over.
Right, that's what I did essentially. I just didn't, I never knew a modification occurred on the Time Machine where my external hard drives would actually end up in Time Machine.
Like I said, by default, if you plug them in for the very first time, they won't.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason you somewhere along, well, gee, I want this data hard drive to be backed up on Time Machine, and you take it out of the exclusions list, from that point on, it's going to be in there.
Don't ever remember doing it though. Okay.
No, unless they change it, and I'm not aware of any kind of a change that they made. However, I was reading something this morning that I thought was, oh, by the way, you can, in my case, on my machine at home, you can back up multiple Macs to that same Time Machine backup. So if you've got 2 or 3 Macs in there, like my wife, she hardly, 99% of what she does is Excel, web, or mail, right? That's 99% of what she does. So I have a real hard time when she says she wants a faster computer. For what? To read your email with? I'd like to get her onto an iPad. I can't convince her to do that. She wants me to buy her one, but I gave my iPad to her for 3 weeks. She never opened it. So to me, that means that I'm just spending, honey, if you want to go buy it yourself, then I don't have to think about it. I wasted money. You wasted the money. But her Mac, the only problem I have with her is she has a bad habit of shutting the lid. So her Mac is backed up to the same Time Machine backup that I have, because it creates a folder called Martial Lock. It'll be a unique one for her, since the computer's got a unique name. So if you've got a big enough hard drive, you can put multiple backup on there. The only problem is it won't back up if the lid is shut, especially on an older Mac. It might on the newer ones, because a lot of them have the lights out feature, but it won't on an older Mac. So she says, this isn't being backed up. Hell, leave the lid open more than 5 minutes. Leave it open for an hour. You can always go look and see. You can put the icon, they've changed this, I don't like it. Let me zoom up on this. That's the Time Machine icon. In the good old days, this is a couple of operating systems back, when it was backing up, you saw that whole thing rotating. So it was real obvious. Nowadays, what it does, it adds a tail to the arrow.
It does what?
It adds a tail.
another triangle.
It adds the same, the pointy end of the arrow and the feather end of the arrow. It adds the feather end of the arrow onto that circle. So it's pretty subtle about not being very visible that it's actually doing something right now. That is dumb. Now, Apple should have left an option for you to have the old style icon or the new style icon. I'm sorry, that's me.
That's typical Apple.
It's typical Apple. Do things their own way.
Make a change, they make it worse.
It's just, I've complained about things on the iPhone with the location of some of the keys and stuff, and it's like, they don't listen.
What happened to the colored icons in the sidebar? That disappeared, right?
Yeah, and just like, well, here's messages. Messages used to be blue when it was available. Now you can't tell whether it's available or not unless you go look at it.
Zoom back out, Greg. The thing that really gets me is, see your 3 dots? Those 3 dots are flat colors. They used to have depth, and they were larger.
What 3 dots are you talking about?
The upper left.
Oh, notification?
The upper left corner, Greg, of each window.
Oh, these, okay.
Yeah, those have changed over time. They've gotten smaller, where they used to have depth. They're just flat now. But I'm not so worried about that as much as the size, because you've got to get your cursor right on it. I mean, sometimes you click it and it doesn't do anything, and then you have to move it around and click it again.
Well, you set your resolution really low.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
The only other option.
Don't go there.
Yeah, we're all in that boat, unfortunately, so. Okay, and thank you, Stuart, for reminding me. Time Machine runs, like I said, runs every hour, okay?
You can change
Before I made the change from my wireless service at home, my cable and all that crap is AT&T Uverse. And I was calling to bitch about something, because about once a month I had to reboot my modem. They eventually crap out. They just crap out, especially wherever they're buying it from, Yamaguchi or wherever, I don't know, down near Mexico Way or something. Anyway, I'd get reboot the modem and all of a sudden I'd get more speed back. Well, a lot of it I think is them playing games with throttling and all that kind of blooming. So I was griping at AT&T one day about an issue that I was having, and the lady told me, well, we own DirecTV now. We can upgrade your AT&T Uverse package to be AT&T Uverse / DirecTV. Well, what does that get me? Well, first off, instead of your TV stuff for your digital video recorder coming down the 2-wire modem, the 2 wires coming into the house, right, the phone line, that'll come through satellite like DirecTV was or Dish Network is. That'll come that way. So that takes a load off the phone line. It's really obvious why they're doing this. They're apparently going to switch over in about 5 or 6 years to full optical all the way right up to your house. But they're not doing it right now because it's costing them money. So they're trying to think of a way of how can we get more service to more customers without spending any more money.
Did they actually say they're gonna put fiber to the house?
The guy did. She wouldn't tell me that over the phone, but the guy standing there, he goes, this is a stopgap. What we're doing right now, this is a stopgap. We're eventually gonna run fiber right to the house. That's what people have to want.
So expensive, it's unbelievable.
Well, I'm sure you'll be signed in for a 2 or 3 year contract in order for them to offset the payment. And if they're smart, when I poured the concrete in my backyard because the damn wire ran underneath, I went out and bought PVC and ran the wire through the PVC because they'd already chopped it up once by mistake. So in my case, they could tie it onto the end and pull it through if they wanted to. But anyway, so what I've got now is my television comes through DirecTV, and it's fabulous. I mean, it's great. I wasn't paying for HD before. Now I'm getting HD for free. It's $60 a month savings over what the AT&T Uverse, the AT&T DirecTV is. So I'm getting everything that I got plus, and I'm saving $720 a year. So it was a real boon for me.
That's a land cable.
Pardon?
That's a land cable.
It was a LAN cable. The video now is coming back from a DirecTV satellite dish, which is slightly bigger than the. So now I got 3 dishes on the roof. Really, really classy looking from the old DirecTV, from the old Dish Network days. So unfortunately, the idiots haven't got their billing together yet. So now I'm getting a bill for AT&T and a bill from AT&T Direct, and I paid them both separately, but I didn't realize there was a different account number, and they threatened to cut me off until they realized, oh, you sent them. I said, I can't be the only guy you're having. No, it's happening to a lot of people. We've got a real problem. We're supposed to have it fixed by the end of this month, and it'll all be back in.
Oh, the same thing, so I gotta check my account numbers then.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I like it. I really like the service. I like the remotes. I like everything about it.
Greg, I went into the AT&T store the other day. We have 4 phones on our family plan and family share plan. And I had a leftover 5. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of my business line, my office line, and put it on a iPhone and have it so that I can answer the stuff comes directly to me rather than going and I have to check the answering machine. Well, the thing is he said, well, hey, you're using Cox, aren't you? Yeah. Well, the one thing that happens when you change from Cox to AT&T is Cox won't let you have your email address the same that it's been for 20 years. And so you've got to really investigate that stuff because with me, my email address is published and stuck on different computers, stuff like that. So it's just, that's one problem I always run into is being able to keep that.
Well, it's not only Cox, they all do that.
Yeah.
AT&T does it.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about these two. I've owned Graphic Converter for years, and I like the program. It's about $59 to buy right now, although sometimes you'll find a deal on it somewhere. They're real good. I had no sooner bought 9, about 6 months later he came out with 10, but it was a free upgrade, so he's real good about that.
Oh, excuse me,
Robert's talked about him a few times, yes.
you were gonna mention Time Machine Editor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot.
Thank you.
We were supposed to talk about that today. Graphic converter.
No, we're supposed to talk about it versus.
No.
I wanted to talk about this little program. Okay. Let's hide everything
Oh,
else.
Time Machine Editor, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what I started to say, the problem I had, this is why I got into that tirade on DirecTV. My AT&T old U-verse, my network was a little on the slow side. I mean, it was getting to the house okay, but it was crappy on the inside. And I'd find that I'd be in the middle of doing something, and just as I was getting ready to do it, either Carbonite was backing up, and Carbonite pops up on the screen and tells you when it's backing up. You'll see, well, you can see right now, backup in progress. It's showing up there, it's kind of grayed out. So it has a quick option to come down here and pause for 24 hours, smart move, so that you don't forget to turn it back on, or to lower the priority. And, or Time Machine was backing up, and that was back in the good old days when you could see the little icon rotating around. So sure as heck, I'd be in the middle of doing something, I'd be talking on iChat messages or whatever it is to somebody, and the speed was really crappy. Skype's not affected that way because of the way they, or TeamViewer, because of the way they offload the graphics, but in the case of iChat or messages, you're the host, so it really gets slowed down there. So I found myself turning Time Machine off and on in order to be able to get what I was doing done now. And I ran across this program called Time Machine Editor. With Time Machine Editor, you can go out here and you can customize when you want it to run. So rather than running every hour on the hour, you basically go into System Preferences, into the Time Machine, and you turn it off. Now nothing has changed, other than the fact it's not going to automatically run. And then down here, I can come in here and I can set up, they've improved this, they've got intervals, so I can say I want to back up every hour on the hour, like normal, but don't back up between, let's say, 7 a.m., I'll say 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So that's a new feature that they've added to Time Machine Editor. Before you had to just keep building the list, building the list, building the list. So right now, Time Machine's not going to run at all during the day. It'll only start running again at 11 o'clock at night. So if you found yourself that being an inconvenient, that it's too much power being used up on your internet access or whatever it is because of what you're doing, Time Machine Editor is a freebie that you can download. You turn off the System Preference Time Machine and you use Time Machine Editor. You can even specify what days of the week you want it to back up on, what calendar intervals. Well, I'd like to have it back up every day. I just don't necessarily want it backing up while I'm doing something more important. Yes, Bart?
Let me ask you something. I run my computer, I keep going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, you know, I have Time Machine on there. Is it actually writing a file every hour, even during the time I'm not using the computer?
If it doesn't need to, it doesn't bother.
Oh, okay, so I'm not
It'll say scanning.
losing disk space because of that.
It'll say, you saw those folders when we were over there looking at that? That's the date and time that it actually backed something up.
And if nothing has changed during those hours,
It ignores
It
it.
just ignores it. Okay, good.
So for me,
Mike's
Time Machine
doing-
Editor isn't as critical for me anymore because everything's improved inside my house. Not me, but everything else.
What Greg's doing is he's saying, okay, I don't want you to back up between those hours because I need the fastest speed.
Well, that's what I was doing, not so much anymore.
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking of
Yeah.
doing because it gets dog slow on my, oh God, on my Mac Pro.
Hey, you know, when you're sitting there spending time for the screen to refresh, you want to get everything you possibly can get back. So part of the deal with saving the $60 a month was I got the next internet notch up, so that solved that problem. And the fact that the not everything's coming down that 2-wire line. Obviously, it's helping the problem. The video's a big bandwidth sucker. So I got HD for the same price of regular TV, which I didn't have HD before.
So are you saying that if you are using some other applications in the time machine, it starts backing up, that slows down the computer somewhat?
It did, in my case. It slowed down the internet access. So it gave the impression that it was slowing down the computer. So for a while, I was doing a lot of stuff with iChat, a lot of stuff with iChat. Every day would be 2 or 3 hours. And sure as hell, I'd be in the middle of iChat, and all of a sudden, you know, you'd go to take over somebody's screen, and you'd watch it, and you'd see the mouse cursor doing one of these while you're watching somebody else's screen do it. And so I caught on that both Carbonite and Time Machine. So on Time Machine, I could come up here, I'd have to go into System Preferences and turn it off. But Carbonite had that ability to be able to do it for 24 hours right there. So that saved me a lot. And you can see, if I look over here in CPU, you can see Carbonite's the first one showing. 120% is being used just looking for files. If I lower the priority, that sets that down. But since they have it as a menu option, I can just go up there and pause it for 24 hours. And the most I'm going to be off is 24 hours. I can live with that.
Right.
So had Apple added something like that as a pop-up for Time Machine, that would have been convenient. The only option they had was you could make a backup right now, or you could open up the preferences. And to me, there should have been a cancel right now option on there, and that would have solved the problem for me.
You can, if it's back, you can cancel a backup that's going on at the moment.
You can, but you can't get to it from that menu
Right.
pick. You have to go in preferences.
Oh, no, you can. You can get it from
They
the,
used to on 10.6 that I'm using on the G5, it has
You can't.
stop.
Oh, you know, it probably switches when it says backup now.
Yeah.
It probably switches, that's right. Okay. So anyway, that's an alternative. If you notice that being an issue, it's probably not as much of an issue as it used to be. Download Time Machine Editor, it's a freebie. Turn off Time Machine in System Preferences after you got it all set up the way you want. And use Time Machine Editor to control it, because it's all being done in system level. Make sense?
So Greg, is that your internet now through the satellite?
No, only the TV part comes through the satellite. The wireless server, well, that's still the same. The voice over IP, I'm not using AT&T because they didn't have an option for it. I'm using Vontage. I want to drop that. Nothing against them. We just get too many junk calls. What do we need it for?
They have increased like
Unbelievable.
unbelievable.
So right now, the only thing that's coming down the actual phone line anymore is internet access. That's it. So offloading that television, which is on at our house about 20 hours out of the day, because my wife sleeps with it on. I've had to move to another room because it was driving me crazy. How many episodes of Matlock do you have to have here on this DVR? There'll be Matlock, Murder, She Wrote, Heart to Heart. It's like 30 episodes of everything. I wonder why there's no space. She goes, are you recording that sci-fi movie? Yeah, dear. I have one thing out of your 50, you know.
Well, my wife, my son was over at this place over at Harbor, Book Off. Excuse me. And he found a set of Sony headphones, wireless headphones. So when my wife's ready to go to bed, I'm sitting there on the recliner, or not the recliner, but the chaise, watching the news at 11 o'clock. She'll go over, before she goes into the bed, she'll pick up the headset, give it to me, and I turn off the volume, and she can go to sleep and I can still watch it. So maybe you should try that.
Well, because I was working and she wasn't, and I was getting up at 5 in the morning, that bugged her more than anything else.
Yeah.
Getting up at 5 in the morning, taking a shower. So now I would take a shower before I go to bed at night, and then now I don't have to worry about it. I just wake up whenever I wake up anymore right now. So.
You know, the best thing is separate bedrooms.
Well, we own a 3,100 square foot house for 2 people. It has 4 bedrooms and a bonus room that can be turned into another bedroom.
Right.
It has 3 fireplaces. That's asinine. It has 2 wet bars. That's really asinine for non-drinkers. Or people who don't drink anymore, let's put it that way. Just because I liked it too much, I just decided to give it up. Okay. So I've touted this program, Graphic Converter, for years. I really like it. It saves my bacon a lot of time. But I've always been a Photoshop user. So it was never a biggie for me to have to use Graphic Converter. Here's its big claim to fame. You can save this file in show all. In more formats than should be allowed to exist.
Right, exactly.
I mean, formats I've never heard of.
We'll save it in Photoshop?
It will save in Photoshop.
Matt Paint up there, Greg.
Well, I mean, one of the weirdest ones, Silicon Graphics had their own proprietary format. It saves in Silicon Graphics format. Opens and saves in Silicon. So, I mean, if you have a need, look at that, Sun's got its own format. Shockwave image format.
What does the toolbar look like?
I'm sorry?
What does the toolbar look like? All the tools.
You're looking at it pretty much like this.
Where?
Yeah, it's the,
I can't see it.
Sidebar things.
no, the upper thing there, just go across, Greg. Because they can't,
Put it back on.
it's cut off,
It's cut off, can't see it.
yeah.
He means the palette, tool palette.
No, they don't have a normal tool palette like you would think Photoshop would have. GIMP does. GIMP is more like a Photoshop than anything else. So I kind of distinguish these two. If you already have one or the other, that's a different story. If you're looking to get one or the other and you want to go cheap, start with GIMP. It's free. We'll go to that just a second. If you have a need to convert one format to another format, nothing beats these guys. Like I said, I've never seen anything. Editing-wise, the tools are good. A lot of the tools fall over to this palette. I don't like the fact that you can't make this any smaller. You can make it wider, but you can't make it any narrower than that, which is, to me, kind of dumb. I get a little bugged by palettes that aren't more resizable, but you know, that's just the way it is. Get a bigger screen, I know, that's the other answer. And you know when I do that, believe it or not, I take my iPad. I found this, my friend had this case for his iPad. It was $100 made by Zag. And it's a little portable keyboard. Yeah. So I saw that and said, well, that's really cool. I wonder if I can find it cheap. I found this one for $19. It's for an older iPad. So it still fits. The camera doesn't line up right. Now, I never take pictures of the iPad. And the power plug's a little off. And so I just, on the power plug, I just took a rat tail file and filed the plastic out a little bit. Hey, for $20, I figured if it cracked out in a year, I got my 20 bucks out of it. But as a little portable keyboard, that actually works pretty good. And the iPad snaps out of it with no problem. So I actually have this setting at home like this as a second screen. And I'm using a free program that's a bit, well, it's $16, that was written by Apple guys called Duet. And you plug in your iPad or iPhone, it'll work with an iPhone, into a USB port on your Mac, and you can share the screen over there. So on Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, I got all my tool palettes sitting off to the side on that, and saved that as a workspace. That's one of the options you have. So that kind of gave me a little bit bigger screen to be able to work with that home. So, you know, I already had this, might as well be using it for more stuff than I was using it for.
What's it called?
Duet, D-U-E-T. And you'll find it, the App Store one is free. The one for the Mac is about $16, because it's worthless without the Mac one. And the other ones that I had tried to use that before, where you put part of your screen over here, and you have different resolutions, which is interesting. They all work Bluetooth-wise, and so sometimes you'd see a lag back and forth. And besides that, you want to leave the damn thing plugged in anyway. Why do you want to run the batteries down when you're just using it as a display? So to me, it made much more sense to leave it plugged in all the time, and it makes all the connections through the cable. So Duet for $16, that was a great utilization of getting more. You can plug an iPhone into it as well, believe it or not, and put just little palettes on the iPhone if you want to. So that works out pretty cool. I liked it from that standpoint. Okay, this program is the program GIMP. Like I said, I think it's got the world's worst name. The first time you install this and go to run it, it's gonna be really slow. Because what it does, it goes out and it looks at your hard drive to find all the fonts that are out there and any databases that you might have used before, which if it's the first time you're using it, they don't exist. So it's gonna look everywhere. But after that, it comes up really quick. So I'm gonna look in desktop. I made a dummy folder up here called images, all of them the same image bar in silo. And so GIMP has really improved over the years. In the first iteration, damn near every tool there was had its own palette. They didn't build any of the palettes up with extra stuff on it like you see here on. So this is more along the lines of like a Photoshop usage. It has pretty much everything that you can think of for doing anything. And again, since I can put the palettes on another window with that display, I can use that for this as well. And these are scanned 35mm slides that I've got here that have done pretty well in competition for me. And so this works out really well. Like I said, this treats the palettes more along the lines of a conventional program, where Photoshop, they would stay in front all the time. This at least toggles back and forth. So you could be using the whole screen, and when you need the extra space, well, you wouldn't want to do it that way. When you need the extra space, like a spot where you can come over there and click on it and bring the palette forward. I just find it easier to put them off on under the program. But since I own Photoshop, it's not really a problem. But this is free to download. There's no obligation of any sort. They update it really consistently. As soon as Adobe brings out some kind of a new change for Photoshop, both Graphic Converter, at least this one, GIMP seems to have it almost right away. It's save as options. I don't think it's got nearly the flexibility. No, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, if you export.
Is that what it is? If you export it?
Yeah,
this is
just
how
playing around
few times
with
I've ever used it. And we're
Export as, and
we
then,
got a few choices there.
Whoa. Is that on the
Not
App-
quite the same as
is that on the App Store?
but quite
No.
a few.
No, because it's not a Apple program. It's not written for Apple. It's written for every platform. So you can type in, you can just go to Google
Oh, okay.
and type in GIMP and it'll find it. We'll give you a break. I didn't want that. The new image manipulation program.
GIMP.org.
Yeah. You'll find it from a lot of different places. You'll find it under CNET, you'll find it on Download Central, you'll find it on Two Cows, a lot of places have it.
Yeah, but you'd probably be best to go to the main one.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with any of the stuff I've ever gotten from, some people have said there's problems with Download and Software
See,
Central and
yeah.
a few of the other ones, but
I have-
anything, the nice thing is this gets updated on a regular basis. And if some real unique feature comes up, chances are they'll have it within about 3 or 4 months. But this is all volunteer, so you have to kind of bear that in mind. Graphic Converter has the advantage that since it is a paid application, if you got a problem, the guy from Lemke Soft, I forget his name, Robert knows it.
Yeah.
The guy from Lemke Soft, you can write him and say, hey, such and such. You'll get an answer back like the next day. I was really surprised at how to do it.
He's very
And
good.
he's got a full-on manual that comes with Graphic Converter that you can download, so, or that comes with it as part of the download. Okay? While we're here, we got any other questions anybody's got?
Yeah, can I get back to my original 3?
You bet. What was it? I forget, sorry.
I have a video that was taken.
Oh, you're the one I was looking for. I was sitting here thinking, who was the guy that asked about that question? My son is does
Okay.
video editing.
So what format is the video in now? It's on a DVD?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just need the audio only, at least to start off with, right?
You-
So
you
you
can't-
need something like Mac the Ripper. Don't you love that name?
Well, Greg,
Yes.
if he has it already as a movie digitally, he can put it into iMovie,
Yes.
and then
If
he
you had it
can
in a movie
detach audio.
format, you could pull the audio out that way. In fact, you could get it in GarageBand. GarageBand will open up iMovie.
Which is the best one to use?
What do you want to do with the audio?
I want to lay it onto another DVD that has better quality of the movie.
Okay, here's the problem. You can't just add it directly to a DVD.
Right.
You have to add it to the raw footage and then make a DVD from that.
Well, I think I have the raw footage.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because I did the DVD, then I put it through Handbrake.
Okay.
So it should be raw, right?
Yeah, it's ripped it. Handbrake will rip it. Yeah.
And I've got the DVDs that way. So I could go to the video, or their MP4s, and just pull the audio off of each one, or I've never done this, and I have no clue as to how to even start. And I've tried to use my friend Google, and I don't know the right questions to ask.
Where do
Well,
you-
I mean,
where do
even-
you-
What part?
Wait, okay, because you could get my son to come out.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
He knows all this stuff.
There's a guy whose
Yeah.
specialty is nothing but movies and presentation.
Yeah. And he could sit there, as long as you got all the stuff, all he does is just teach you. Hours, $25, you know. So,
Give me some information.
yeah.
Steve is excellent. In fact, I guess he's done some stuff for my friend now.
Yeah.
And I guess he's finally done some for that food company thing, so he's about as good as you can get.
Shipping as far as setting up a home theater,
I'm sorry?
as far as setting up a home theater.
Well, he can do that too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But my friend is selling, it's like a Nutrisystem or something like that. It's another Shackley or Basic, it's another one of those, pyramid scheme deals where you're selling a food supplemental or whatever the hell it is. And originally he gave me a video he shot on one camera, shot it, and I pulled it in, I cleaned it up, I sharpened it a little bit, and I did this all just in, believe it or not, in iMovie. And added some titles and tracks. And after I did it all, I'm doing this as a courtesy thing for my friend now. After I put about 8 hours worth of jacking around with this thing and burned it off to a couple of DVDs for it, they decided they were going to reshoot it after I went through all that and wanted me to do this again. And I said, you know what? I don't do that. Well, we'll pay you. I know how that works when you're doing stuff with friends.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So I thought, you know what? Steve's son specializes in doing this. He can probably make recommendations what they can, because he does it all the time. I do it